I don't trust people anymore, not because I hate them, but because every single fucking hand I held eventually dropped me. I showed up when it was uncomfortable, when it was heavy, when nobody else wanted the responsibility. I stayed loyal, stayed patient, stayed silent, and still got left like my effort never mattered. People love you when you're useful, but the second you need them, they vanish without explanation. Look at me, that shit changes you, because you realize trust isn't rare, consistency is. I didn't become guarded for no reason. I became guarded after being dropped too many fucking times. Every promise that broke, every silence that followed taught me exactly how people really move. So if I don't trust people anymore, understand, this isn't bitterness, it's survival.
Get your life, get your life, get your life, baby. I got mine, why you could serve my mind, baby. Feeling me, that's why they killing me, lately. Get your life. Get your life, get your life, get your life, baby. I got mine, why you could serve my mind, baby. Feeling me, that's why they killing me, lately. Get your life. Run up when you see me, no disguises. Keep that thing with me, cause I don't do surprises. J Chanel, show and tell, all facts, no lies, streak. Get your life, cause I'm the type to come to it that mind quick. Eyes on me, what you care for? Watching me, baby, care for. If you ain't a fan, where the cameras? Hide in the back with the bellboys. My circle so restricted. Hands raised like it's your religion. When I sleep, pay close attention. Fake friends out here pretending. Get your life, get your life, get your life, baby. I got mine, why you could serve my mind, baby. Feeling me, that's why they killing me, lately. Get your life. Get your life, get your life, get your life, baby. I got mine, why you could serve my mind, baby. Feeling me, that's why they killing me, lately. Get your life.
Focus there.
Watch them cause they after me like a pot of gold. I'm not for play, ask Keisha if you don't know. I'm a little bit cray-cray, approach me, you better be right. If you don't come correctly, you can catch these hands tonight. Eyes on me, what you care for? Watching me, baby, care for. If you ain't a fan, where the cameras? Hide in the back with the bellboys. My circle's so restricted. Hands raised like it's your religion. When I sleep, pay close attention. Fake friends out here pretending. Get your life, get your life, get your life, baby. I got mine, why you could serve my mind, baby. Feeling me, that's why they killing me, lately. Get your life.
Get your life.
Get your life, get your life, get your life, baby. I got mine, why you could serve my mind, baby. Feeling me, that's why they killing me, lately. Get your life.
Get your life, boo.
You don't understand. I ain't scared of you motherfuckers.
Alrighty, good morning, good evening, good night, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Your nighttime, right time DJ Music here with another episode of the Chop Shop. Oh man, February, Black History Month. Not too much has been really said about it, ladies and gentlemen. It seems to me A lot of it is just not even talked about. And I'm going to point out why here in just a few minutes. Let me slide on over to the lounge right quickly. Hold on just a second. Let me get on over here. The name of the song, John, is Eyes on Me. Samuels, let me think of his name. Sam Samuels is the name of the song, Eyes on Me. Indeed. But anyway, folks, you see what's on the screen here. We're going to talk about Black history since we got one more day of it. And I don't know how many of you folks are aware that the fact that, hold on just a second, all the different things that's going on to erase Black history. Let me turn this down just a little bit more. Let me turn this down just a little bit more. There are all these things that are being done to erase Black history since the Trump regime. I started talking about this in 2016, slowly but surely. Remember all the fuss and the fight that we had to get Black History Month to become a national holiday, Juneteenth to become a national holiday recognized. Well, there's some folks that just took that off their holiday schedule. In Missouri, I do believe it is. South Carolina, Georgia, and a few places, they haven't outlawed it or banned it out, but they pretty much have made it pretty hard to celebrate the greatness of Black people. And I'm going to show you some of exactly what I'm talking about, starting with the State of the Union. Donald Trump, one of the very first things he said out of his mouth, he said he alone ended diverse, equity, and inclusion. But yet, there's some white Americans that say that this America is built on diversity. So how do you end that? But let's get straight to the videos, folks. I ain't gonna hold you long. Let me remove this off the screen, and I'm gonna show you exactly what I'm talking about. Y'all remember the State of the Union? I don't know how many of y'all might have watched it, but the State of the Union. Check out what your presidents did. This is reported by indisputable Dr. Rashad Ritchie. Y'all check this out.
Address: when you hire a clown to be president of the United States, a clown show you will get. Here it is.
We ended DEI in America.
Now, I want y'all to look at this picture because Dr. Ritchie is going to speak on this in just a little bit, but I want you to examine this picture very closely. And again, like I said, I've been talking about this since 2016. Look at the amount of who is in Congress right now and the era that these folks grew up in. And look who's clapping. Look who's clapping to the fact that diverse, equity, and inclusion has been all but eliminated. Look who's clapping. This is past Republican, Democrat, but look who's clapping.
Nobody stands up. These people are crazy. I'm telling you, they're crazy. Oh boy, we're lucky we have a country with people like this. Democrats are destroying our country, but we've stopped it just in the nick of time, didn't we? Huh? Isn't that a shame? You should be ashamed of yourself not standing up. You should be ashamed of yourself. That is why I'm also asking you to end deadly sanctuary cities.
This is the President of the United States talking to seated members of Congress this way, folks. You should be ashamed of yourself for not standing up. There's no written law anywhere that says that you have to stand up. This man all but wants to be a king. But remember, I said, look who's clapping on the other side. Look who's applauding for this kind of behavior. Let's continue.
That protect the criminals and enact serious penalties for public officials who block the removal.
Now, we see a Republican Omar say something, and Fox News and all those folks over there, they went absolutely crazy. But remember when Marjorie Taylor Greene did the very same thing. She came in there with a mink coat on and called the president of the United States, was that Joe Biden at that time, a liar. What's the difference? It was okay when Marjorie Taylor Greene did it, but now they're calling for her to be sanctioned.
Of criminal aliens, in many cases, drug lords, murderers all over our country. They're blocking the removal of these people out of our country, and you should be ashamed of yourself.
I have more video, a few notes right now. DEI. He received a roaring round of applause.
Roaring.
From an audience of 99% old ass white men.
Okay.
Who stood up to applaud the ending of DEI. What is DEI?
What is DEI, folks?
Diversity, equity, and inclusion. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. Understand what they are applauding. The end of what they term diversity, equity, and inclusion means to give white individuals, in particular white men, an unfair advantage while disadvantaging others in the workplace, in economics, in higher education, and the list goes on.
And that was what those folks were applauding. That's what they were standing up to say, yay. They were applauding all those people that lost their jobs, that was replaced by white men. That's what those folks that you elected was applauding, because the government gutted anything that had to do with DEI. We only tipped the surface. This is Black History Month, folks. Nobody's talking about it. Nobody's talking about the systematic whitewashing again. But this time, as Doc Holliday said, this time it's legal. We fell for the okie doke again.
There was a time when we all universally said diversity, equity, and inclusion is the goal. That's the model. That is your benchmark. That is your moral compass in order to target. We want to be known. We want to engage in equitable practices like being inclusive, engaging based on non-bias, not bias, to give people a fair opportunity. That's what diversity, equity, and inclusion mean. Fairness at the beginning, middle, and end of the day. So they're telling you they are opposed to your ideology of diversity. What is the ideology of diversity? America, the current state of the country, which he was supposed to be addressing in the State of the Union. We are a diverse nation.
Did y'all, I don't know how many of y'all watched the State of the Union, but what about that horrible clown show brought the country any closer to being undivided? Nothing. He called the Democrats' name all night long. He touted about wars that he said he didn't, he wasn't going to create, that he did. He threatened people. This is what dictators do, folks. And you got those minions over there that stood up and applauded everything this dumbass man said. If you take out all the words that Trump lied about, the only thing that you would hear is him breathing. Everything else came out of his mouth was an absolute positive lie that can easily be verified. The economy's in shambles. I don't give a damn what no one says. The stock market is not a measure of everyday America. What's up there, Club Fortune? How
Let's
you doing,
compare
brother?
how Trump and President Obama addressed opposing parties. Here it is.
And I commit to every Republican here tonight that I will not only seek out your ideas, I will seek to work with you to make this country stronger.
I look at the Democrats in front.
Now, again, folks, you can say what you want to against Barack Obama and his policies. You have every right to that. You have every right to agree or disagree with what Barack Obama said, but it's not about policy right now. It's about the person. Look at the stark contrast of what we saw from President Barack Obama and President Donald Trump. Look at the stark contrast of how he speaks to the American people. Both sides. Obama versus Trump. And you're absolutely right there, Club Fortune. This two-party system right now, this business of checks and balances, whichever party is in power, that's who dictates policy. That's got to change, man. Say what you want to. Listen, I know what the Democrats are going to do if they get back in power. They're going to have a bunch of hearings, and they're going to try and prosecute a whole lot of these folks, as well they should. But their main focus won't be on governing. It'll be on holding these people accountable for the shit that they do, on the shit that they've done. That's just more taxpayer money that we're going to have to go back and prosecute these folks for crimes that's obviously being committed right in our damn face. No one should be in America above reproach, but we see that there is a certain sector of people that is. You had the former Vice President Hillary Clinton, his former Secretary of State, drugged into a hearing to talk about Epstein, where the majority of the questions weren't about Epstein. Why, if you're going to depose Hillary Clinton, why don't you depose some of the names that you know for sure that's on that list? And why not let the public see it? What was so hard? If Hillary Clinton was willing to sit down and say, yeah, let's do this in public, why was the Republican so hell-bent on keeping it behind closed doors?
Front of me, and I realize there is absolutely nothing I can say to make them happy or to make them stand or smile or applaud. Nothing I can do.
If you share the broad vision I outlined tonight, I ask you to join me in the work at hand. If you disagree with parts of it, I hope you'll at least work with me where you do agree.
These people sitting right here will not clap, will not stand, and certainly will not cheer for these astronomical achievements. They won't do it, no matter what. It's very sad, and it just shouldn't be this way.
Understand, a better politics isn't one where Democrats abandon their agenda or Republicans simply embrace mine. A better politics is one where we appeal to each other's basic decency instead of our basest fears. A better politics is one where we debate without demonizing each other.
We take out the criminals, killers, traffickers, and child predators who are allowed to enter our country under the open border policy of these people, the Democrats, the Biden administration, the open border insane policies that you've allowed to destroy our country.
For all our blind spots and shortcomings, we are a people with the strength and generosity.
Look at this so far. What a difference 10 years makes, folks. Again, whether you agree with Obama's policies on how he governed or anything about what he stood for, but you cannot deny the stark contrast. You can't deny that.
Of spirit to bridge divides, to unite in common effort. We are still more than a collection of red states and blue states, that we are the United States of America.
In recent years, our justice system has been turned upside down by radical left lunatics.
What do you see? You see one man who earned his position as president of the United States by way of hope, unity, working together, moral clarity on policy issues, and decency to work with those who may disagree, because let's face it, it's not the American way, it is the human way. We are all on this journey together. Then you have another individual who has achieved a similar status, meaning being president of the United States, occupying the White House. But he gained his position by stoking fear, by illuminating differences, by articulating bigotry, by making you afraid, by putting fear in the hearts and minds of the gullible. Two very different styles, two very different points of view, two very different methodologies. Effective as they may be, one brings you to a space where you can be proud to leave a legacy to your daughter and your son, your granddaughters and your grandsons. The other legacy, however, I don't think any decent parent would wish that legacy, the legacy of Trump, MAGA, and cronies. I don't think anyone would consciously wish that kind of legacy on their own children or grandchildren. Hakeem Jeffries, leader for the Democrats, he spoke out. Here is his response.
Just came off the House floor. That State of the Union, so-called State of the Union, was a disaster. Donald Trump believes that the economy has been turned around under his leadership. The economy is a disaster, bro. People are struggling.
The economy is a disaster. And it is. Gas is high, prices is high. Folks is losing their Medicaid, Medi-Cal, all kind of different things. Folks that relied on government subsidies, where they, in some cases, yeah, is there government fraud? Was there some things that needed to be cleaned up in the welfare system? Of course, you always gonna have criminals. But because, as the old saying goes, one bad apple should not spoil the whole bunch. And that's the knife, the hot knife that Trump ran through butter with and his regime. They went through and just said, I don't care about how you feed your children. That's not my business. I don't care how high your medication is. That's not my business. If you can't afford it, I don't care if you're 60, 70, 75, 80 years old. You got to get out and work. That's what Trump and his regime is telling the entire United States of America. Meanwhile, he's enriching himself, billions and billions and billions of dollars, him and his family.
And you didn't spend any time today providing any vision for how to actually improve the lives of the American people. That was a joke of a speech, and it will do nothing to improve your failing poll numbers. That was worse than Celebrity Apprentice.
The worst poll numbers of any American president. Settling around at what, 36, 37. I think the highest has been in the last couple of months is 39% approval. You ain't even get halfway. Come on, man. Come on, Trump.
And the American people are going to strike back in November.
Yeah, let's hope so. And let's also collectively believe that this will be the last time America hires a game show host to be president of the United States. It's an utter disaster. The man has no moral clarity. Put it a full mass. Let's recap some of this, of what Trump actually said during the State of the Union. And keep that up, Jordan. And I want to make this point. For many who are saying this was not a real State of the Union, or he doesn't represent the values of the country that you believe in, or somehow this is not the true union of our state, those are damn lies. This is the State of the Union.
I told
This
you
is
that.
our current status.
This is
where we are, who we are, what.
That's it. That's a damn lie. This is who we are. Because if this not who America was, we would not have a game show host hosted having the highest office in the land. Yes, this is who you are, America. This is who you are. You would rather take a seasoned politician with, just because she was a woman, and just because her skin was darker, y'all hired this clown over her. And you wonder why your business is going belly up. My fault there. First, Dr. Dredd. I stand corrected. I don't mind being wrong. I should have used the word modern day president. So you're absolutely right with that. 22%. You're absolutely right about that. But this is who you folks hired. This is who America is. January 6th told you who America was. Y'all didn't want to believe that. Charlottesville, Virginia told you who America was. Y'all didn't want to believe that. Donald Trump told you who he was. Y'all didn't want to believe that. Stephen Miller told you who he was. Y'all didn't want to believe that. All the so-called military generals that gave up their entire careers to fall on the sword of Donald Trump. They told you who they were, but y'all didn't want to believe that. Jesse Waters over on Fox News. Noise is absolutely right. Told you exactly who he was. Y'all don't want to believe that. Most of the entire people that watch the news, so-called watch Fox. That's not news. So the majority of the United States of America watches a TV broadcast show, as they call it, state regime TV, that indulge in bad business every day. How many times has Fox News been sued? Let's go back to the election and how they ran with the election, talking about all these machines were fraudulent. And when they got sued, how many millions of dollars? But the majority of America, where they get their news from, where they get their idea about politics and what's going on, is Fox News, Fox and Friends, Jesse Waters, and all of the rest of them folks.
We are now. And the sooner we can admit that, the quicker we can get out of this mess. We are here. There is no slippery slope. We've been on the slippery slope, and we are now simply on a free fall. Until somebody realizes they have wings and can fly in this atmosphere. And that's you. To recap, Trump said, quote, "Isn't that a shame? You should be ashamed of yourself, not standing up. You should be ashamed of yourself," declared Trump after he regained the floor. Quote, "That is why I'm asking for you to end deadly sanctuary cities that protect the criminals and enact serious penalties for public officials who block the removal of criminal aliens, in many cases, drug lords, murderers, all over our country. They're blocking the removal of these people out of our country, and you should be ashamed of yourself." He continues speaking over Reps Omar and Talib, who shouted at him from their seats, quote, "You killed Americans. You should be ashamed." And that is correct. They're factually right. Trump is factually incorrect for those of us who still care that he may sometimes tell the truth and lie at other times. He just lies all the time. Let's be clear, sanctuary cities actually have a lower criminal index among undocumented individuals. Why? Because those cities have a working relationship of trust with local law enforcement. That's why. And they tend to not engage in senseless arrest and deportation of individuals who are not committing any crimes, prioritizing those who actually do.
And that's the bottom line to it, folks. Again, you can go look up the stats for yourself. Crime is lower in sanctuary cities. And the majority of the crimes that's being done are committed in red states. Those states are the highest in the crime stats right now. You can go check that out for yourself. These is not something that you can argue with me about. If most of you come up here that disagree, if you're into the stats, that y'all like to come up and quote, go look at the stats for yourself. Stats says the majority of the major cities that have high crime rates are red states. And first doctor, you said, I don't think the election had anything about sex or had anything about sex or skin color. I think people had enough of it. No, sir. I wholeheartedly disagree with that. Maybe this is your first time to YouTube, or maybe you were just maybe just you were just watching something else, but that was in the forefront. Folks literally was holding streams saying, I refuse to vote for a woman. I don't care what her policies are. There was folks that was holding streams that said, I refuse to vote for a black woman on top of that. Oh, sir, it was about color. It was about being a woman. What else could it have been about? It couldn't have been about policy because Trump ain't brought out none yet. Give me a policy from Trump. Give me a trade deal that Trump has closed, or just he's talked about. But give me a trade deal that Trump is closed in on in the last year. There's a lot of proposals on the table. Only thing Trump has done that we know that we can pinpoint is tariffs. And he convinced a whole lot of America that they paying the tariffs when it's actually us paying the tariffs. Ask the farmers right now that since the tariffs have hit and he wanted tariffs, all these, that they can't ship out their grain anymore because other countries are buying it from other places. They're not buying the cattle anymore, the dairy products and all that anymore because they're finding it cheaper someplace else because of the tariffs. These are not my words. These are actual facts. So again, sex or skin color in the last election, yeah, it had everything to do with it, sir. That's a crazy. I'm going to get back to the video here in a second. I actually let me remove this, and I think this is why I do these, folks. When people ask questions like this, again, not being disrespectful, their first doctor, but he asked the question: if that's true, then why choose a black woman as a candidate? Or it just seems stupid to me. And that's what America wants us to do. Just give up. Accept the status quo. Don't do anything to change the way we run things. There should be, according to your logic, why rock the boat? White men have always been presidents. No, I wouldn't say simple, bro, but I'll just say it's that statement in itself, just saying, don't give us any pushback. And without pushback, you really wouldn't have a country, would you? What if folks said that about the Boston Tea Party? And don't throw that tea in the water. You're gonna mess it up. I changed the color. I didn't say Obama was white. I never said that. Where'd you pick that up? And Mike, hey, Mike Spearman, how you doing? And this is another thing that I want to point out. You know, a lot of people will say, because of your, they like to point out the age thing sometime there, Mike. But in this case, there is such a thing as an old fool. And any elder, any person that calls himself an elder, I should say, that said that stood up openly and said tariffs are good for the United States, something's wrong with him. Yassa Bosson is what I would call him. He's not an elder. He's a Yassa boss. No, I said that's what they wanted. That's what they wanted. They didn't want to change the status quo. If there would have been no pushback, I could have used that same thing to say what you just said just now, that Obama was a black president. What if you said, well, why would we put a try to elect a black man? We know America's not going to have that. It's the same sentiment. By your logic, all we should ever have had was white presidents. There shouldn't have been any pushback. But anyway, folks, this is the 100th year anniversary of Black History Month. Actually, tomorrow, February 1st is. Tomorrow is the last day. I think, to be quite honest with you, I think officially this will be the last time that anyone other than people of color celebrate Black History Month. I think people don't realize the significance of it. You had this some folks saying that Juneteenth should not be an official holiday, that we should put back Columbus Day because that's a true representation of America and America's values. So basically what this congressman said, that America is based on a lie. We would rather represent a lie about Columbus than to have the truth represented. That the last time that the last time that American slavery actually existed in this country was in 1865. That was when the final slaves said, what? We what? Free. No. And I hear a lot of people on these platforms and on these streams and social media saying that slavery was good. Remember Ron DeSantis said that they learned something? Well, what could you learn from this?
When he's a baby. And they carried my father away and carried my two sisters and one brother. And they left me.
Have an auction bench and they put you up on the bench and bid on you the same as bidding on cattle, you know.
They spent decades hiding these recordings. When you hear what Fountain Hughes said about being sold on auction blocks like cattle, you'll understand why the American education system buried these voices for generations.
I've heard some people say there's no proof that slavery ever existed. What is this?
Had no home, you know. We just turned out like a lot of cattle. You know how to turn cattle out in the pasture?
These aren't actors. These are the last living witnesses of slavery. And what they revealed exposes the systematic brutality that built this nation. In 1949, a Baltimore interviewer found a 101-year-old man named Fountain Hughes living in a small room.
My name is Fountain Hughes. I was born in Charlottesville, Virginia. My grandfather belonged to Thomas Jefferson. My grandfather was 115 years old when he died.
When he started speaking, the truth about American slavery became impossible to deny.
We were slaves. We belonged to people. They sell us like they sell horses and cows and hogs.
This wasn't a metaphor. This was a memory. The Library of Congress has these recordings. They've had them since the 1940s, but somehow they never made it into your history textbooks. 4 elderly Black Americans, born into slavery, speaking into microphones decades after their supposed freedom, told stories that destroy every comfortable lie about the peculiar institution. Fountain Hughes remembered the exact mechanics of human sale. His voice, preserved on magnetic tape, described standing on auction benches while white men bid on Black bodies.
Have an auction bench and they put you up on the bench and bid on you the same as bidding on cattle, you know.
This wasn't distant history when Hughes spoke these words in 1949. He was describing his childhood, his mother's reality, the system that treated his entire family as livestock with market value. But the most damaging revelation came when Hughes described what happened after so-called emancipation.
It just turned out like a lot of cattle. You know how to turn cattle out in the pasture? Well, after freedom, you know, colored people didn't have nothing. Colored people didn't have no beds when they were slaves. They gonna sleep on the floor.
Just chill.
So again, when you hear folks say that, well, after the folks were free from slavery, they had means and ways of taking care of things. No, they were turned out like cattle. They had nothing. They had literally nothing except for what they had on their back, tattered clothes. They had nothing. So how do you lift yourself up from the bootstraps when you have no straps to grab? This is the voice of an actual slave. Anybody want to debate? Anybody want to go back in time and tell this man this is not his memory? Can anybody argue this point?
Children sleeping on floors, hiding in underwear at night, running from the same people who had claimed to own them. The government that freed them provided nothing. The system that enslaved them kept everything. Hughes couldn't even walk across the street without written permission. I couldn't go from here across the street, or I couldn't go through nobody's house without I have a note or something from my master.
Now I couldn't go from here across the street, or I couldn't go to nobody's house without I have a note or something from my master. And if I had that pass, that was what we call a pass. If I had that pass, I could go wherever he sent me.
Every movement tracked, every hour accounted for. Every step required white authorization. This was the freedom they gave him. Harriet Smith's testimony exposed something darker. How
you heard the voice of Langston Hughes. So imagine, let's equate that to what's going on right now, to my brown folks in the Latino communities. What's going on with, you know, them little cubes you put in water to make it chilled. How they're just walking up to folks, and if you ain't got the right set of papers on you, you in a detention camp. Over half the people that they have in these so-called ICE camps are non-violent offenders. All they did wrong was be brown. That's what they did wrong. Now, I heard someone say if Trump and his regime had their way, it wouldn't be brown people that they're rounding up. And y'all know what I mean by that.
violence against black families continued long after slavery ended. Her husband, a respected churchman known by white folks, was ambushed on a Cedar Break road, shot down in broad daylight. The killer? A young white man Harriet had nursed as a baby.
That boy that killed my husband, I nursed him when he was a baby.
She had fed him at her breast, raised him alongside her own children, and he grew up to murder her husband on a familiar road. His mother tried to stop him, Smith remembered. The killer said, "I ain't gonna let him kill me like he did Uncle Jay."
His mother tried to keep him from killing him, but he just said, "I ain't gonna let him kill me like he did Uncle Jay."
But there was no Uncle Jay. There was no threat. Just the inherited fear and hatred that made a white man see danger in a black man walking home from work. The white community, WK and others, found the body first. They brought the news. They controlled the narrative. And Harriet Smith lived with that controlled story for the rest of her life, knowing the boy she'd kept alive as an infant had destroyed her family.
Now imagine again, folks. Imagine. Watching your husband or watching your father being murdered in front of you, unalived, taken out in front of you, and there's absolutely nothing you can do. This is American history, and this is what they want to erase. This is not a victim card, sir. See, this is what I'm talking about. This is what guys like you will say, that this is a victim card. You call facts a victim card. This is not a victim card. This is facts and realities. This is what you don't, as an American, don't want to face. So y'all use that moniker of playing the victim card. But let this situation have been reversed. Reparations out the ass. Again, this is not victim. This is not a victimhood. This is truth. This is your history. First Dread. This is American history, First Dread. Whether you want to admit to it or not, this is not victimhood. This is reminding you of what happened. And then let me read this. As much as I think slavery is evil, however, I do not like free people using it. What do you mean free people? See, the thing about it is you said you are taking what you said out of context. What context am I taking it out of? I'll read it to you again. So you tell me which part of the context am I missing here? As much as I think slavery is evil, I'll agree with you there. However, usually when someone uses the word however, it's going to be a contradictory statement behind that. And here's your contradictory statement, sir. I do not like free people using it as a victim card when there is more slavery happening now in the world than there has ever been. What's the purpose of that statement? We're not talking about now. We're talking about then. But I'm going to get to now. It's funny, you didn't have anything to say when I showed those congressmen standing up clapping for DEI. But as soon as somebody mentions something, the horrors of slavery, and show you that it actually happened, you got plenty to say. Hey, what's up there, Shar? What's up there, Candy Cane Lane? How you ladies doing? Good to see you. Welcome in. Well, isn't that what you got? Isn't that, you saying people, isn't that what everyone does? Your ancestors, I'm going to take, I'm only guessing. I know you don't need to tell me that first, doctor. I'm going to take it that you are a Caucasian. Don't Caucasian people worship their ancestors? So much so, don't y'all worship your ancestors so much that you call them the forefathers? So there's some people that you ain't even related to. Ain't they on your money? Ain't there monuments built after Thomas Jefferson? That's even worse. You're from Spain? That's even worse. So again, more contradictory statements, sir. Everybody talks about the suffrage of their ancestors. When you hear white Americans that so-called made it, the first thing they say is my mama and my daddy or my great-grandmother, my great-grandfather came over to this country with nothing. We hear that from your folks that immigrate here from Spain. My mama, my great-granddaddy, my great-uncle on my daddy's side, they came over on the boat, on the Nina, the Santa Maria, and the Pinta, whatever that was, came over here and found a new world and made it. Not forgetting that if it had not been for the native people that was here, sir, your whole expedition would have died off. You didn't come to the Americas as the New World, as they called it, prepared. If it had not been for the native folks, y'all would have died off. But what did you do in return? You gave them blankets with smallpox in it. We're going to get to that too. But let's finish this.
Laura Smalley's memory carried the weight of witnessed torture. She described how a woman named Martha Albert was dragged to a peach orchard.
Martha Albert hurt her wrist. And she asked her then, says, what you doing in this house?
That's my point. You said nothing about Congress. That's exactly my point there, first doctor. That is my point.
Oh, she hurt no mister. Said she wasn't hurting no mister. She just Mr. Brown Hooker, she saw her down.
Her hands tied around a tree and whipped until she could do nothing but kick her feet in the dirt. I remember that just as well. Look like to me I can, Smalley said. The image burned into her mind across decades.
I remember that just as well. Look like to me I can. And round a tree and whipped her. And well, she couldn't do nothing but just kick her feet, just kick her feet.
The punishment came from a fabricated accusation, an elderly white woman claiming injury where none existed. No trial, no evidence, just immediate public brutalization. The orchard, a place that should symbolize sweetness and abundance, became a site of sanctioned torture. Smalley watched as a
You remember that? You remember that old saying that where they say with the peaches, the peach orchards? That's why a lot of black folks don't eat from peach orchards, because that is a true story, but people will tell you that is a myth. And let's see what you said here first, Doctor. You said, there is no contradiction. I do not like people taking their ancestors' suffering as if their suffering is their own. They are not suffering as their ancestors are, but they act like it. Well, I think somebody just answered. Here, just there it is right there. CJ, what's up with you? Appreciate it. The survivors of the Holocaust and their families still talk about and use what happened to them every day. First Doctor, their family members didn't go through it, but they use it and talk about it. First Doctor, it's not coming from me. That's coming from somebody I just met. CJ, you ever been here before? You ever heard me speak before? Is this your first time on this channel? Now, how two people that never met each other have the same damn opinion? Oh, he typed up what I was about to tell you. Well, that's exactly what we're doing. We're talking about it. And in some cases, learning about it. Because in some cases, First Doctor, they're trying to eliminate this. This is the purpose of this stream. To alert people that this is what they're trying to not teach us in schools anymore. They're trying to tell us that we shouldn't learn this history. Chances are this video is not going to be monetized. Chances are that this video will probably get, somebody will probably go back to like the last video and strike it for some reason or the other, or say that it's not, it's against the community standards or something.
Child, forced to witness what happened to black women who were accused of the slightest transgression. The message was clear. This could be you. What made this testimony so damaging wasn't just the violence. It was the casualness. The way plantation owners turned everyday spaces into chambers of punishment. The way children were made to watch, ensuring the next generation understood their place.
Imagine that, because you remember what Fountain Hughes said? They just turned us out like cattle. So imagine going through all that trauma for years of watching your mamas get beat, watching your uncles and your daddies and your brothers be murdered, just to be turned out like cattle with no therapy at all. And you think that's not going to be passed down from generation to generation, sir? Some of y'all folks, some of y'all folks got therapy if your cat get ran over. In therapy for years if your nose got crooked. In therapy for years if you gain a little weight. I suggest, First Doctor, you go read Dr. DeGrew's book. Or go check her out there, Dr. Joyce DeGrew. Go check out some of the works that she's done. Maybe you'll get a little bit more understanding, because she's a lot more educated than I am. And maybe you'll understand her a little bit better. Maybe I'm not articulating myself enough to you.
Alice Gaston was a child when the Yankees came through, but her supposed liberators brought their own terror. They carried my father away and carried away my 2 sisters and 1 brother, and they left me.
And they carried my father away and carried my 2 sisters and 1 brother. And they left me.
Here was the truth about the Civil War that no textbook admits. Union soldiers also destroyed black families. They took who they wanted, left who they didn't, and called it liberation. But Gaston's testimony revealed something even more perverse. Her mistress ran to hide in the garden, terrified of the Yankees, and coached the enslaved children to lie for her.
I can remember when my mistress used to run in the garden upon the Yankees and tell us if they come, don't tell them where they're at.
The same children who had been enslaved were now expected to protect their enslavers.
Don't get scared now and tell them where they is.
A child trained to lie for the people who owned her. Loyalty demanded from those who had never received protection. Before we expose what these survivors revealed about the
Imagine that. All those years of inflicting pain and suffering. Now that the Yankees are coming, you got to tell them that you don't know where I'm at. If you see her, point them out. There she is. There she is right there. She hiding over there in the garden. She over there, remember in the scene in Django, she's out there in the field about to whipload Jody for breaking eggs. I'd have pointed her out. Now, as another scene in Django, now as I see it, you can help him back to the stars that way, or you can do what? You know what they chose. You're conditioned that way, folks. You know, you hear all these folks talking about the Stepford wives and all this other stuff like this. But, you know, imagine that way of life forced on you from childhood. You don't know no better. So all you're going to do is what your master or your mistress tell you. If they come, you ain't seen me. Because when they leave, if you don't lie for me, bad things are going to happen. Well, let me say this. He says, I'm not denying that we should keep this history and learn from it. But people who are free today pretending they live suffering. What do you mean free? Can you explain free? Everybody is free. You act like that there's some big reason why you got to put in the word free. Everybody is free. Or are we? Go to the airport first, doctor, and see if you can go to another country without showing them your ID and telling them where you need to go, where you want to go. How free is the American society really? Are you speaking as free men or free as in free to do what you want to? Because in this country, you're not free to do what you want to do. There's consequences and repercussions behind some things. You can't have a total free society. It'll end up in chaos sooner or later. And I hate to go to this next thing, but you're going to talk about reparations. So I'm going to skip over that for a minute. All right, first.
her hands tied around a tree. But Gaston's testimony revealed something even more perverse. Her mistress ran to hide in the garden, terrified of the Yankees, and coached the enslaved children to lie for her.
I can remember when my mistress used to run in the garden upon the Yankees and tell us if they come, don't tell them where they're at.
The same children who had been enslaved were now expected to protect their enslavers.
Don't get scared now and tell them where they is.
A child trained to lie for the people who owned her. Loyalty demanded from those who had never received protection. Before we expose what these survivors revealed about the auction blocks, the whippings, and the families torn apart, if you believe these hidden testimonies need to be heard, subscribe to Black Stories Untold and help us ensure these voices are never silenced.
Please do, folks. I have put the link down to Black Stories Untold. Also, the links to all the videos that we're going to view today, the links of those as well. So I would appreciate it if you get over to Indisputable, whether you like or dislike Dr. Richie. Go over there and drop a comment or two on the video that we reviewed. I'm sure that you'll find something interesting over there at this other joint. So get on over there and check it out, folks. But again, you know, this is hidden history, or this is history that they try to hide, or this is history that they don't want us to talk about. But it has to be. That's the only way. It's like your grandma's recipe. If you stop talking about it, it don't get passed down. If you stop doing it, it don't get passed down. Eventually, somebody won't mention it anymore. So hopefully one day my sons will pick up the mantle and do the same thing that I'm doing. Passing information down. What's up there, Sir Top Ham? I tip my hat to you. Who owned the slave ships? A whole lot of folks. It depends on what slave ships you're talking about. And someone mentioned that the other day. Why can't we see any any of these slave ships. Well, there are replicas of them, but as I said, the more reason why you can't see them, because they weren't built to wood to last. There was no wood preservatives really back then, so the elements took care of that. Wood only lasts for so long before either the weevils get it, the weather gets it, or the termites get it. Who owns slave ships? Again, it depends on who you're talking about. There's so many people. The Americans, they own slave ships. The Spaniards own slave ships. The Africans own slave ships. Some Africans did own slave ships. Well, transports, as they say, troop transports, as I call them. And they would ship them from one small boat to another big ship. So everybody had slave ships. Listen, verse. Either way, he says, "I'm done here. You are not understanding what I'm trying to say. I am trying to understand, because I'm not giving you the answers that you want. That's what usually happens when you don't agree with someone. You can do one or two things. Either you can continue to push the point of what you think, or you can leave. Yeah, I think you're choosing to do the latter. So you have a great day, sir. Thank you very much for your time and your words. Now, because I didn't agree with your words, don't go away. Don't go mad. Just go away. Thank you for stopping in. Appreciate you."
Again. Now back to the video. Laura Smalley's second testimony exposed the deliberate starvation used as control. She described a man given only a single ear of corn for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Give me a corn. Give me a corn. Just like, you give me a year of corn.
This wasn't neglect. This was calculated cruelty designed to break the human spirit while keeping the body barely functional enough to work. Slow starvation as behavioral modification. Hunger as a tool of dominance. The man was expected to work full days on 3 ears of corn. When he moved too slowly from weakness, they called him lazy. When he moved too quickly despite the hunger, they reduced his rations further. There was no winning, only survival or death. Fountain Hughes carried one more revelation.
Can you imagine that, folks? That where they rationed your food. Could you imagine in this day and age, first doctor, could you imagine this day and age surviving on an ear of corn? Well, in some cases, I'm sorry, I'm not here to I'm not here, sir, to make you feel better. That's not that. That's that. I'm sorry if you feel bad about what I said, but as they say, hit dogs will holler. How do you survive on dirt? What's the nutritional value in dirt? So did you say you ate dirt? I've known some people to eat clay. So you actually can tell me that you can survive on 3 ears of corn. I don't think there's anybody that can survive on 3 ears of corn. Let's do the math. There's 7 days in a week. 7 times 3 is what? So you tell me you can survive on less than 25 ears of corn? Corn really has no nutritional value. You really can't digest it. How do you know that you really don't digest corn? The next time you eat an ear of corn, look back in the toilet like most people should do anyway. See if them kernels ain't in the toilet with you. The body doesn't really digest corn. So what's the nutritional value in it? You understand now? So I don't think anyone could survive on corn alone. What's up there, Russell Dixon? Well, I can only afford to eat every other day. This is now times. I work every day, and that's the point. But you heard in the, I'm sure you're just coming in, but the open stanza when we recovered Trump, he said, The economy's at an all-time high. America is winning. Well, Russell, would you agree with that? Wait a minute, but it seems, he says, but it seems you do not read. I just said, you do not upset me, yet you think you upset me. No, well, no, I didn't say I upset you. The mere fact that you think that I am saying that tells me that you're a bit perturbed. Now, if we look up all the synonyms of perturbed, upset would probably be one of them. Am I right? Well, I'm going to 5790123. You could thousands of years ago. This isn't Jah created. Isn't Cohen Jah created? Well, okay. Let's get to the video here.
That shattered the myth of black families separated only by sale. His father died fighting in the Union Army, the very force supposedly fighting for his freedom.
During the army, and my father got killed in the army, you know, so it left us small children just to live on whatever people choose to give us.
His father had joined the force of liberation and never returned. The war that was meant to free them orphaned them instead. No widow's pension for Hughes's mother. No support for the children. Just survival on whatever people choose to give us. The same precarious existence they'd known in slavery, now without even the perverse protection of being someone's property. These recordings have existed since the 1940s. The Library of Congress preserved them. Historians knew about them. Yet for decades, they remained buried in archives while schools taught sanitized versions of slavery. Why? Because these voices make it impossible to maintain comfortable lives. You can't listen to Fountain Hughes describe auction blocks and then pretend slavery was just unpaid labor. You can't hear Harriet Smith's story and claim racial violence ended with emancipation. You can't process Laura Smalley's testimony and reduce slavery to economic theory. John Henry Falk and Herman Norwood, the interviewers who preserved these voices, understood they were capturing something irreplaceable: the last witnesses, the final testimony. The voices that would disappear forever if not preserved on magnetic tape. They were right. Every person in these recordings is long dead, but their words remain, cutting through decades of deliberate historical revision. 4 voices out of millions, but enough to destroy the fundamental lies America tells itself. Today, we have these recordings freely available online. Anyone can listen to Fountain Hughes describe being treated as livestock. Anyone can hear Harriet Smith's pain. Anyone can access Laura Smalley's memories of torture. Anyone can understand Alice Gaston's stolen childhood. But how many people know they exist? How many teachers play them in classrooms? How many textbooks quote them? The systematic erasure continues, just with different methods. When states ban teaching about systemic racism, they're banning Fountain Hughes' voice. When schools remove divisive concepts, they're removing Harriet Smith's testimony. When politicians attack critical race theory, they're attacking the truth Laura Smalley preserved. When textbooks...
Now, do you understand first, Doctor? I don't know why you keep, I don't know if you're still here or not, but now you understand. This is why you have folks like me have to do things like this. And this is why I speak to you the way I do, because you're trying to make this an irrelevant thing by saying you don't know why people would talk about the past and use it as a victim card. This is white America's way of telling us to be quiet in a polite way. Don't talk about it. Well, no, sir. You're going to talk about it. You're going to have to face up to your demons one day. Notice how I skipped over reparations, because you're not going to pull me into an argument that I can't win.
Minimize slavery's horror, they're silencing Alice Gaston all over again. These 4 elderly Black Americans spoke their truth into microphones, knowing they were the last. No one younger had these memories. No one else could testify to what they'd seen, felt, survived. In their words, you hear the exhaustion of carrying unbearable memories, the weight of being living evidence, the burden of knowing that if they didn't speak, the truth would die with them. Fountain Hughes lived to 101, carrying the memory of auction blocks for nearly...
I want you to think about that. During the time of slavery, the majority of this man's life, he was in bondage. But he had the wits about him to know that if I don't speak this now, it's gone forever. It's gone with me. I am the last of us. Folks want to talk about their Christianity. Let's talk about how, won't God do it? Huh? In his infinite wisdom, Fountain Hughes understood that this was something that somebody needed to know. Because if I don't say it now, and you see what Ron DeSantis did, you see what they're doing. They're going systematically trying to tell folks, let's take this out the school system. They don't need to learn about this. The very same things that should have been, we should have been knowing. This was out in the 1940s. These recordings were available to the American public since 1940s, but the only place you could find them was in the Library of Congress and the Smithsonian. You couldn't find them in textbooks. How many of y'all went to high school and ever heard of Fountain Hughes until the internet? Readily available, like my man said. Nobody goes to watch that.
A century. Harriet Smith lived with the image of her husband's murder. Laura Smalley never forgot the peach orchard. Alice Gaston remembered being left behind. They didn't speak for sympathy. They spoke for the record. They spoke so we would know. They spoke because someone finally asked, finally listened, finally preserved their words. And now we have them. Voices from slavery's last survivors telling us exactly what America did to Black bodies, Black families, Black futures. Not interpretation, not speculation. Direct testimony from those who lived it. Their voices remain as evidence. Evidence of a system built on breaking Black bodies. Evidence of violence that continued after supposed freedom. Evidence of families destroyed, children traumatized, humans reduced to property. Evidence that cannot be denied, only ignored. If this hidden history opened your eyes to what they've been hiding, click on that video right there to discover another piece of suppressed Black history.
And me most certainly will, there, ladies and gentlemen. That's exactly what I'm using today. I couldn't have found a better site to solidify what I wanted to speak of, because again, this is Black History Month. And unless I do something traumatic, this will be on YouTube forever. This will be on the internet forever. So I'm doing my part. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I'm passing down knowledge, whether you like how I'm doing it, whether you agree with what I'm doing with it. The fact is, I am doing it. I'm not over here talking about the brother man. Yeah, I engage in little fuckery every now and then. But let's like this right here. How many of y'all, let me take this off the screen. How many of y'all knew this? Y'all check this out. How many of y'all knew this right here?
Worth preserving. That Africa contributed nothing to medicine or science. That every medical breakthrough came from European minds in European labs. But there was one enslaved man whose knowledge didn't just challenge this lie. It changed the fate of the entire world. His name was Onesimus, and in 1721, he shared a secret that would save millions of lives across centuries. Colonial Boston was dying from smallpox. Doctors had no answers. The disease was killing 1 in 7 people who caught it. Then Onesimus told his enslaver about a technique he had learned in Africa, a way to prevent smallpox by deliberately giving someone a mild case. The white doctor who tried it saved hundreds of lives.
Vaccines. That's what they call them nowadays, folks. They call them vaccines. When you go get the flu shot, guess what they do? They give you and purposely inject you with a mild case of the flu. They've been doing that since 1721, when this enslaved African told his master, you know what you got to do, master? You got to make them sick a little bit. But how did this African know that? Folks will believe that slaves were stupid. Slaves were dumb. They were just that. Who's zooming who, folks? Who's zooming who? America. This is why they don't want y'all to know this. This is why they don't want to talk about this, because they would have to downgrade some of their heroes. They would have to say they're not the first to do this. They would have to say we didn't discover this. That's the problem with America. It will not come. It does not want to come to grips with what it has done, what it has stolen. Look.
The white minister who promoted it became famous. But Onesimus, his name was buried so deep that most people have never heard of him.
How many of y'all heard of his name since before today? Put a one in the chat. I don't expect to see maybe one or two. There's some smart folks out there, not saying, but I tell you what, until last week, when I started comprising this videos together, I never heard of him. I thought smallpox was something that white folks invented, the vaccine. I honestly did. Why? Because that's what I was taught. And I'm sure a lot of y'all thought the same thing.
Same society that lived because of his knowledge refused to give him credit for it. By the end of this video, you will understand how one enslaved man's wisdom became the foundation for vaccines that would eventually wipe smallpox off the face of the earth, and why they worked so hard to erase him from the story. Picture Boston in 1721. 11,000 people packed into a small peninsula, and death is spreading from house to house. In April, the ship HMS Seahorse pulls into Boston Harbor, carrying smallpox in the blood of its crew. Within weeks, the disease tears through the city like wildfire. Fever that burns your brain. Pustules that cover every inch of your skin. Pain so intense that grown men scream for mercy. By summer, nearly 6,000 people are infected. The wealthy flee to the countryside. The poor are left to die. Every day, carts roll through the streets collecting bodies. This is smallpox.
Sound familiar, folks? Take you back to 2020. You see what I mean, Jason? See what I mean, Jason?
The killer that has haunted humanity for thousands of years. In a house on Fish Street lives Cotton Mather, one of the most powerful men in Massachusetts. Puritan minister, Harvard graduate. The same man who helped fuel the Salem witch trials 30 years earlier. Mather owns several enslaved people, including a man he calls Onesimus. We don't know Onesimus's real name, the one his African parents gave him. We don't know exactly which part of West Africa he was stolen from. What we do know is that he carried in his mind knowledge that would change everything. Sometime around 1716, Mather asked Onesimus if he had ever had smallpox. Onesimus gave an answer that should have made history. Yes and no. I had it, but not the bad kind. Then he showed Mather a small scar on his arm. Onesimus explained that in his homeland, healers would take material from someone with a mild case of smallpox and scratch it into the skin of healthy people. Those people would get sick for a few days, then recover, and they would never get the deadly form of smallpox again. This wasn't superstition or folk remedy. This was sophisticated medical knowledge passed down through generations of African healers. In parts of West Africa, variolation, deliberately causing mild smallpox to prevent severe smallpox, had been protecting communities for centuries. But Cotton Mather lived in a world that considered Africans primitive and ignorant. How could an enslaved man know something that trained European doctors did not? If you want more hidden stories like this,
How can that be possible, there, ladies and gentlemen? You heard it for yourself. That was the thinking of some Americans back in those days. How possibly could this thing that we have in this, because at this time, by saying thing, hey there, ABT, how you doing? This thing, because if you look in the Constitution, they said we 3/5 of a human could be smarter than me. Trained doctors. How could this thing that's working in the field that barely could speak English be smarter than me? Well, some of us bear the scars of what exactly what Odesimus was talking about. Depends on where you got the shot at, depends on which shoulder. If you probably look, there's still a scar there. There's probably still a scar there.
Subscribe to Black Stories Untold. Now back to what happened when Mather decided to test this African knowledge against one of history's deadliest plagues. When smallpox began killing dozens of Bostonians every day, Mather remembered what Onesimus had told him. He had also read reports from the Ottoman Empire describing similar practices, but it was Onesimus's first-hand account and the scar on his arm that convinced Mather this could work. Mather approached Boston's doctors with the idea. Their response was swift and brutal. Absolutely not. Dr. William Douglas, who had trained in Scotland, spoke for the medical establishment. Inoculation was dangerous, unproven, and probably witchcraft. These learned men would not take medical advice from an enslaved African.
And what's going on today, folks? What did they say about what do they call it, the stab? I don't know.
All except one. Dr. Zabdio Boylston agreed to try Onesimus's method. On June 26, 1721, Boylston made a decision that would echo through history. In his own home, he inoculated his 6-year-old son and 2 enslaved people with smallpox matter taken from an infected patient. He scratched the material into small cuts on their arms, exactly as Onesimus had described. Then he waited. If the African knowledge was wrong, he had just murdered his own child. 3 days later, all 3 developed mild fevers. A few pustules appeared.
Now, I want y'all to think about this, folks. In the name of science, this man was possibly willing to sacrifice his own child. So he had to know that what Decimus was saying was at least plausible. Because I don't think any man would put their child under that without thinking, you know what, I'm not going to do this. Think about that. He used his own child. Was he confident or was he foolish? Y'all decide.
Then they recovered completely. The variolation had worked exactly as Onesimus said it would. But Boston was not ready to accept that an enslaved man had solved what their doctors could not. The backlash was immediate and vicious.
Angry crowds gathered outside Boylston's house, shouting that he was a murderer. Ministers preached that
what did they call Fauci? It's funny how history repeats itself. But then they'll tell people, don't pay attention to history. But it's funny, those who refuse to look at history and learn history is doomed to repeat it. Damn, 2020. How did they vilify Dr. Fauci? Huh? Still to this day.
Inoculation was against God's will. One night, someone threw a bomb through Cotton Mather's window with a note threatening to inoculate him with death. The white medical establishment was furious that their authority was being challenged by African knowledge. But people were dying by the dozens every day, and word was spreading that the inoculated patients were surviving. Desperate families began seeking out Boylston in secret. By the time the epidemic ended in early 1722, the results were undeniable. Of the nearly 6,000 people who caught smallpox naturally, about 850 died, a death rate of roughly 15%. Of the 280 people Boylston inoculated using Onesimus's method, only 6 died, a death rate of just over 2%. The African technique was 7 times safer than taking your chances with a natural disease. Onesimus's knowledge.
And again, folks, we can go back to history, talking about the greatness of us on Black history. Here it is again. 2020, all the way back to 1721. Same set of circumstances, different disease. There was folks that knew there was a cure out there. I guess according to their standards, this was a rush cure, because you heard all the vitriol that was coming from white doctors. Did we not hear that in 2020? Did we not hear that from politicians in 2020? Didn't we not hear that from folks in the general public that simply refused to wear a mask because there was a violation of their rights? Fuck a pandemic. I'd rather y'all see my pretty face and take a chance. Well, as you saw, those who caught smallpox back in those days naturally didn't do anything about it. The majority of them perished. And those who went under the method of Dr. Boyden, who they kind of credit for the smallpox vaccine, it's don't miss an Onesius. That's why I'm doing this. Where's his name is? One doctor. Because see, me and Jason thought we didn't know nothing about Onesius until today. But Jason didn't. I didn't know about Onesius until last week. There'll probably be some more folks that watch this that will never hear that name until they watch this or watch the fact. Okay. See that? Get a chicken pox, they take you over. What they used to do, once somebody had chicken pox, they take you over to your cousin's house, knowing damn well your cousin had chicken pox. They just want to hurry up and get it. We know you're going to run into it sooner or later, especially in a public school. So go ahead and get it now. Still happening to this day. Sure is. At least I know where you got it from.
Had saved hundreds of lives in Boston alone. This should have been the moment when the world recognized that an enslaved African man had revolutionized medicine. Instead, it was the beginning of his erasure. But the impact of Onesimus's knowledge was just getting started. What happened next would ripple across centuries and eventually save hundreds of millions of lives worldwide. The success in Boston sparked debates about inoculation throughout the American colonies and Europe. Cotton Mather published detailed accounts of the trials, positioning himself as the hero who brought inoculation to America.
Okay.
Zabdiel Boylston traveled to London, where he was celebrated by the Royal Society and met with European doctors eager to learn the technique. The practice spread slowly but steadily. During the Revolutionary War, George Washington ordered the entire Continental Army to be inoculated.
Wait a minute, I'm sorry, but I just had, I don't know why I had an Ice Cube flashback when he said what's over this, the city kings and queens, and not a nigga ain't right. The very guy that they should have been talking about. Well, actually, you know, this is hidden history. That's why I know sometimes it's a little humorous, and I like to make a little humor out of it, but damn. You know what I'm saying, ABT? Sitting up in front of kings and queens, basking in the glow, and not a nigga in sight.
A decision that may have saved the revolution itself. But in all these accounts, in all these celebrations, Onesimus was becoming a footnote, then a whisper, then nothing at all. 75 years later, an English country doctor named Edward Jenner would build on the foundation that Onesimus had helped establish. Jenner discovered that inoculation with cowpox could prevent smallpox without the risks of variolation. This became the...
And there you go there, Jason. See? Goes deeper than Edward Jenner. But if you go to the regular school systems, and even in some colleges, that's as far as the smallpox vaccine go. If you don't dig deeper, you think it started right there. So there's one doctor. See, this is why I do what we do here, bro. Some folks know that, and some folks' knowledge needs a little refresher course or a little push in a direction. Again, I don't mind learning. I like learning. I hope until I took my last breath, I learned something that day. First doctor, I don't know if you're still in there or not, but you might have got a little mad at me.
First true vaccine. The word comes from vaca, Latin for cow. Jenner is rightly called the father of vaccination, but his breakthrough stood on the shoulders of the African knowledge that Onesimus had shared in a Boston parlor decades earlier. The connection was clear. Variolation proved that inoculation could work. Jenner made it safer. Yet as vaccination became the standard, the African origins of the concept faded from memory. The vaccines that followed Jenner's cowpox innovation would reshape human history. Smallpox vaccines protected millions in the 19th and 20th centuries. The technique Jenner perfected became the model for vaccines against polio, measles, tuberculosis, and dozens of other diseases.
And absolutely, folks, there's no taking away from the greatness of Dr. Jenner. Absolutely not. But what we're saying is, without the trials before Dr. Jenner and the actual origins of just a simple, what they tried to say was someone that was lesser than them, meaning the African man, wiped off the face of the earth. There's no history about him anywhere if you don't look for it. And I keep saying this over and over. And knowledge don't come to you. You got to go get it. And the internet makes that highly possible now. You can go get it now. You can't hide it if you're looking for it. Because in their zest to be right about everything, some things is we know mathematically wrong and historically and grammatically wrong. We know now that Columbus did not discover America. We know that. But yet, you got some folks saying, forget Juneteenth. Bring back Columbus Day. You got folks that want to take the name of folks that tried to end slavery off bases in America and put the enslaver's name back on it because it's the American heritage. So like Dr. Richie say, this is you, America. You're good at hiding shit. You're good at stealing shit. You're good at starting shit and not finishing it. The best thing that America ever invented was the patent office. Say what you want to. Let's go. It's Friday. Got a couple hours.
In 1967, the World Health Organization launched an ambitious campaign to eradicate smallpox entirely through mass vaccination. It was one of the most successful public health efforts in human history. On May 8, 1980, the WHO declared smallpox officially extinct, the first disease ever wiped from the face of the earth by human effort. Keep watching, because what comes next will show you exactly how they managed to erase the man whose knowledge made it all possible. The celebration of smallpox eradication in 1980 was global and justified. Humanity had conquered one of its oldest enemies. Scientists, doctors, and public health officials were praised for this incredible achievement. Edward Jenner's name was spoken with reverence. The WHO officials who led the campaign became heroes. But in all the speeches, all the documentaries, all the history books about this triumph, one name was missing: Onesimus. The enslaved African man whose understanding of variolation had started the chain of knowledge that led to global eradication was nowhere to be found in the victory celebration. This wasn't an accident. This was systematic erasure, and it followed a pattern that has been repeated countless times throughout American history.
Countless throughout American history. And we're going to see some more examples of that in just a little bit.
When Black knowledge, Black innovation, or Black brilliance threatens the narrative of white intellectual superiority, It gets minimized, reframed, or deleted entirely. The blood bank that saved millions of lives in World War II, developed by Dr. Charles Drew, a black man who was then banned from donating to his own creation because of segregation. The carbon filament that made Edison's light bulb actually work, invented by Lewis Latimer, a black man whose contribution was buried under Edison's fame. The mathematical calculations that put Americans on the moon, done by Katherine Johnson and other black women who were hidden from history until a movie forced us to remember them.
Onesimus represents the earliest example of this pattern in American medicine.
And probably one of the first patterns of it. And there you are, folks. But when you see this, when you hear white Americans, and I'm talking to y'all, the hit dogs will holler because not all of white America thinks this way, but it's enough for y'all that I got to point it out. If you see them, point them out. They're quick to say, we don't like black folks. We don't like nothing they stand for. Well, okay. So you don't stand for being healthy. You don't stand for none of those inventions that you just saw across the screen there just now. Your quality of life is not better because of smallpox. Smallpox would still be in existence if not been for that African that y'all despise so much. Yes, there's other great people behind it. But that name right there and the caption says it all. Without him, without his knowledge, without, even though being an enslaved African, snatched from your country, he still had the wherewithal to keep that in his head, his memory, but something that was practiced from years and years and years. And that's the idea of it, folks. They want you to believe, because remember in the 1970s and 80s and 90s, when you used to see the commercials, they show you the little fat belly African kid with flies running on the side of his mouth, tears running down his face, hungry, with his hand dipped in a bowl of mush or oatmeal or something, belly hanging out. How come none of them kids ever grown up? How come we still see them same commercials today? Them kids ain't never grown up. They want y'all to believe that Africa is just this nothing. They want us to believe that they did us a favor by snatching us up. That we had no religion, we had no thought, we had nothing over in the continent of Africa. That we had no contributions to the United States of America as a whole. And here it is, hour and 37 minutes into it. Didn't take me very long to debunk it, but I ain't finished with you yet, America. It's Black History Month, and y'all gonna listen today or tomorrow, whenever. You done picked the wrong nigga to fuck with.
His knowledge was sophisticated, accurate, and life-saving. He shared it willingly, even with the man who enslaved him. It worked exactly as he said it would, saving hundreds of lives immediately and contributing to medical advances that would save millions more. But acknowledging Onesimus meant acknowledging that Africans possessed scientific knowledge that Europeans did not. It meant admitting that slavery had silenced brilliant minds who had valuable contributions to make. It meant recognizing that some of Western medicine's greatest breakthroughs came from the very people that Western society was brutally oppressing. So they did what they always do. They took the knowledge and erased the man.
Took the knowledge and erased the man. We see it in what? Music, science. We see it throughout history. Folks always ask, why is the nose busted off the Sphinx? Because it's noses are easy recognizable. Because you're not going to see the phenotype of a Caucasian on the nose of the Sphinx. You can't take that picture, boys. Get on up there with them picks and them shovels and bust up some of that before we take a picture. Bust the nose up. That looks kind of black to me. And we gonna tell them we found some great accomplishment. Why is it that you can go to the census when in the box that it says white or Caucasian, you can type in Egyptian? Go look for yourself. Go look at the latest copy of the census and see if you identify as a white American or Caucasian American, see if you won't find Egyptian in one of those boxes under white America instead of where it's supposed to be African American or black. Go look. You ain't got to believe me. Go look at the census and go look for yourself. Go look at the identifiers. Go look at the boxes. Ask how you identify yourself and tell me you won't find Egyptian in that box. What the fuck is it doing here?
Cotton Mather wrote himself into the story as the visionary who brought inoculation to America. The white doctors who applied the technique became the heroes. The African healing traditions that had preserved and perfected variolation over generations were dismissed as primitive luck. Medical history was rewritten to start the story with European discovery rather than African innovation. By the time smallpox was declared eradicated, the chain of knowledge had been so thoroughly whitewashed that most people involved in the celebration had never heard of Onesimus at all. And yet, despite changing the fate of the entire world, Onesimus's name was buried. The same society that benefited from his knowledge refused to credit him for it. Colonial doctors took the glory. Cotton Mather wrote himself into the story. History books rewrote the narrative so thoroughly.
Now there go again, America, writing yourself into the story. Y'all like writing yourself into the story. Hence them $5 Indians. I ain't forgot about you $5 Indians. Y'all wanted to be so much Native American that all it took you was $5. The Dawes Rose. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Stop it. Don't mess with me.
That most Americans never even hear the name Onesimus. His African medical knowledge that saved millions across centuries, was dismissed as primitive, then quietly absorbed into Western medicine without acknowledgement. Even when smallpox was officially declared eradicated in 1980, the celebration never included the enslaved man whose insight made that victory possible. What happened to Onesimus wasn't an accident. It was a deliberate downplaying of Black brilliance, a pattern repeated across generations. When Black intellect threatens white narratives of superiority, it gets minimized, renamed, or erased. The legacy of Onesimus reaches far beyond one epidemic in colonial Boston. His story reveals the hidden foundation of modern medicine and the systematic theft of Black intellectual contributions.
Let's not skip over that. His story represents the hidden foundation of modern medicine. Let's not skip over that statement. From the mind of an African, an enslaved African, by having to, I want y'all to understand this, because you just couldn't walk up to your master and talk to him. You had to get permission. But he must have felt comfortable enough to say, hey, boss, could you imagine? It could have went the other way. It could have went the other way. He could have been summarily killed for knowing too much. Y'all think about that?
Every time you get a vaccination, you are benefiting from knowledge that can be traced back to African healing traditions that Onesimus carried across the Atlantic Ocean. Every child protected from measles, every adult immunized against flu, every person who lives in a world without smallpox owes a debt to the wisdom he shared in 1721.
1721. Think how many people's lives have been saved since then. Think how many people haven't had to go through that horrid disease to where it literally just, y'all see, go look at the, I don't want to pull up no pictures of smallpox, but go look what it does to the human body. And they described it earlier. You're in sheer agony the entire time. Fevers the entire time before death, you finally succumb to death.
But more than that, his story exposes how history gets written by the winners and how the winners have always been careful to write Black contributions out of the story. Today, a few historians and medical researchers are working to restore Onesimus to his rightful place in history.
Some
medical schools now teach about his contribution to vaccination. A small plaque in Boston acknowledges his role in the...
A small plaque in Boston, and some people talk about the greatness of Onesimus. Why isn't it worldwide? Why isn't there more recognition for the greatness of this man that we see on the screen? Because y'all know why. White America ain't having that.
Smallpox trials. But these efforts are recent and limited. For nearly 3 centuries, the man whose knowledge helped save the world was treated as if he never existed. His story was buried, not because it wasn't important, but because it was too important to allow. It proved what racists have always feared, that black minds are brilliant, that African knowledge is sufficient.
And that's what I always say. The most dangerous thing to white America is a black man with a brain or a black woman with a brain. That's the danger to America, to some aspects of America. Say what you want to. I'm entitled to my opinion. This is First Amendment speech. Fair use. I'm entitled to criticize.
Sophisticated, and that the foundations of civilization rest on contributions from every corner of the world. The next time someone tries to tell you that enslaved people had nothing valuable to contribute, remember Onesimus.
Okay.
Remember that he carried in his mind knowledge that would eventually protect billions of people from disease. Remember that he shared this knowledge even with the man who owned him as property. And remember that they erased his name not because his contribution was small, but because it was so large that it threatened everything they wanted you to believe about who creates knowledge and who deserves credit for changing the world. If you want more stories of black excellence that they tried to hide from history, click the video on your screen now.
Don't worry about it, my brother. You ain't got to click it. I got more to come now, folks. It's Friday. It is the 27th day of February. To me, the greatest month of the year, because I happen to be born in that month as we celebrate another year of Black history. The 100th year was when they first started out by Carter G. Woodson as Black History Week. Now, any of y'all get a Black History Parade? Is there any major honors that's on TV about Black History Month? Have y'all seen that on TV? Is there been anything to celebrate the greatness of Black folks during Black History Month? BET, what is that? BET, Black Entertainment Television. Has there been anything on BET? How about ABC? ABC. We interrupt this special program to bring you the greatness of Black people. Dum, 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 dum. I don't think that's happened yet in the month of February. I say give it 3 years, folks. There'll be no such thing as Black History Month. Give it 3 years. Before Trump leave office, if he makes it through 4 years, there will be no such thing as Black History Month. So let's move on to our next video here. I tell you, I came prepared today. Move that one off. Now, y'all want to talk about some more hidden history? Y'all got this one?
In the mountains of Appalachia, there lived entire communities of people who shattered every assumption about American race.
Uh-oh. I heard some people say that this country was founded by white people only. Uh-oh. Newsflash.
Racial identity. People with olive skin and blue eyes. Families with European features but African hair textures. Children who spoke perfect English, owned land, and practiced Christianity, yet didn't fit into any racial category that white America could recognize or control. These weren't isolated individuals struggling on society's margins. These were prosperous landowners, successful business operators, and established families who had been thriving in Tennessee, Virginia, and North Carolina for generations before white settlers even arrived. But here's what terrified the white power structure. These people proved that America had been beautifully, powerfully mixed from its very foundation.
America has been beautifully, powerfully mixed before its very foundation, even before there was such thing as America. What you got to say? all you folks out there that's talking about this is a white man's country. No, it's never been a white man's country. Y'all have always been over here on borrowed time. And if it had been from the goodness of other folks here, there would be no white man in this country at all. You're here by the grace of other folks, natives, that you folks simply want to erase from history because you want this to be MAGA, make America great again. That's the only thing that y'all can say that was good about white men. The country that you created, that you try to exclude everybody that didn't look like you. But here's living proof that America was a melting pot long before this was ever a country. Come on.
Existence demolished the comfortable lie that this was naturally a white Christian nation where racial mixing was rare and destructive. The white neighbors didn't know what to call them, so they invented a slur, Melungeon, probably derived from the French word mélange, meaning mixture, because that's exactly what these people represented, living evidence that racial purity was always a myth designed to serve political power. This is the story of the
white power. White power. This country was founded by white folks. No, sir. It was pieced together through lies that there was no such thing as that there was no the racial mixing this bad. This is how white folks came into power. They convinced other poor white folks that if you put me in power,
secret black tribe that America spent 2 centuries trying to erase from history, and the system nearly succeeded. For over 150 years, Melungeon families crafted origin stories, avoiding uncomfortable truths. The Collins claimed Portuguese ancestry. The Goins insisted on Mediterranean heritage. The Gibsons spoke of shipwrecked Turkish merchants. Then, in 2012, genetic analysis published in the Journal of Genetic Genealogy examined DNA from dozens of documented Melungeon families. The study traced Y chromosome lineages through unbroken male family lines going back 8 generations. The results demolished decades of mythology. Melungeon families carried sub-Saharan African Y chromosome, haplogroup E1b1a, the same genetic marker found in West and Central African populations that supplied enslaved people to colonial America. The Goins family.
There was some arguments talking about this and that white folks made this country up. That black folks was never here. Well, explain these Melungeon folks. Explain how their DNA from 8 generations could be traced back to West Africa. Somebody said, how can you prove that there was Africans here? DNA don't lie. Dana ain't got no reason to lie to you. And like I was saying in that stream, shout out Candy Cane, I don't care what we say, we can all trace our roots back to some place in Africa, the cradle. But somebody was ready to come up there and argue with us and saying they weren't black at all. What's up there, King Pix? How you doing there, my man? Good to see you. Welcome in.
DNA revealed direct paternal descent from African men who arrived in Louisa County, Virginia, between 1650 to 1700. The Collins line showed identical African haplogroups. The Gibson family DNA traced back to Gideon Gibson, documented in 17.
Well, King Pix, I can't argue with it because, that's the running joke. I got no Indian in my family. So, where they from? I think I got some Turkish blood in me. Everybody wants to be someplace else than other than being from Africa. What's wrong with being from Africa, folks? The myth has been busted. It's good to be able to tie your ancestry back to what really is the mother's land. The motherland is not in Turkey. The motherland is not in Europe. more and more and more and more people are starting to find that their heritage, their true heritage, regardless of the color of their skin, if you believe this thing in DNA that they like to lock folks up with, you can't see your DNA is good enough to lock folks up with and say it don't work when it comes to genealogy. What you gonna do? Yeah. Wait a minute. I got that. You were smoking, and I got your DNA from the saliva from the cigarette. But so I know it was you that committed that crime. But if that same DNA tells me that it says that you, as a white man, came from Africa, that's impossible, huh? How does that work? So you're right there. Everybody wants to be something except for being part African, and we all have a little tinge of it in us.
1920 South Carolina court records as having a grandfather who was a free man of color in Virginia. Lead researcher Roberta Estes noted the devastating reaction. There were a whole lot of people upset by this study. They just knew they were Portuguese or Native American. The genetic evidence revealed something significant. These African ancestors weren't enslaved. They were free African men who had married white European women during the early colonial period. Understanding the Melungeon story requires recognizing how these families organized themselves into tight-knit communities that provided.
But understand what he said, that for a while there was a whole lot of pushback. There's absolutely no way that we could be about black ancestry. Those same people right there, some of those very same people gave the pushback. If you looked at them walking down the street, you could not tell any of these folks until that study that they had black ancestry in them. Yes, they are. These are these are some of the very same family that these folks is talking about right now. And if you saw them walking down the street, you would not think that all of these folks in this picture is related, even that dark guy. All of them are related.
Mutual protection against an increasingly hostile world. The core Melungeon settlements centered around Newman's Ridge in Hancock County, Tennessee, but extended into Lee County, Virginia, and surrounding mountain areas that provided natural isolation from white surveillance. Families like the Collins, Mullins, Goins, Gibson, Bunch, Minor, and Denham clans intermarried extensively, creating extended kinship networks that function almost like protective clans. These communities developed distinctive cultural practices that reflected their complex heritage. Children received names rarely used by white or black populations. Eulalia, Canara, Deniza, Mahala, Sylvester, Sylvania.
So now you know where some of the origins of some of the black names that we get, and now you understand why our names are so of now more of a significance other than a punchline. So I would appreciate it if you folks stop using black names as a punchline, like Keisha. Keisha was called that for a reason. There's a reason behind everything. Uh-oh. No, I'm not propping him up. I'm just saying. I'm not propping anybody up. I'm just giving out facts. Now, I'm not saying these are good or bad people. I'm just saying these are the same people who will walk around and tell you that they were not had any black blood in them at all. That is the point. I'm not judging their characters. I've heard some stories about a lot of these folks. Like I said, they tried to clean them up once they couldn't deny it anymore. So I'm not giving them a pass by no stretch. I'm not propping them up now. I know what you're talking about. I'm with you, ABT.
And Sorelda. These naming patterns helped maintain group identity while marking families as belonging to something different from mainstream American racial categories. The geographic isolation wasn't accidental. Mountain terrain provided natural barriers against hostile neighbors and offered protection from legal persecution.
All I can think about, see, ABT, now you made me think about the movie Deliverance. Damn, damn, damn. I know what you're talking about. I'm with you.
That intensified throughout the 19th century. Families could control access to their communities and maintain economic networks without constant outside interference. Most importantly, these communities proved that America's racial mixing wasn't rare or destructive. It was common, successful, and produced prosperous, educated families who contributed significantly to regional development.
And that's kind of the point of this. I'm not saying that these are good or bad people. I'm just showing you an argument, or everyone an argument, to where there's all these folks going around saying that America was this white country that was built by white men. No, but I'm trying to tell you, long before this was ever a country, you already had racial mixing. So everybody wants to point at the Lovey versus Virginia as the benchmark for where people started really becoming of age of being able to racially integrate. No, they've been marrying, black folks been marrying white women for centuries. White women been marrying black men for centuries. It's not nothing. It's not a new concept. And you have a whole tribe of people, good, bad, or indifferent, that disproves this argument that folks are having. They're saying white America was not a racially mixed place before the immigrants came. And it was. They just decided to, after they decided I'm going to leave that alone. Where my man Platinum may lead that? I need you for a minute. I'm going to get out of that.
Before we continue with how the system mobilized to destroy this evidence of America's mixed heritage, if you believe these hidden histories need to be told, please subscribe to Black Stories Untold and help us spread awareness of the truth they don't want you to know. Now, back to the video. Prosperous mixed-race communities threatened the white power mythology America was constructing. The system deployed legal weapons to destroy them. The first documented persecution appears in Stony Creek Baptist Church, minutes from March 13, 1813. Church member Susanna Sizemore was accused of harboring the Melungeons, the first written use of the term. By the 1830s, Tennessee enacted racial legislation targeting mixed-race populations. The 1834 Constitution stripped voting rights from anyone with N-word blood to the third generation. Virginia's 1832 legislature prohibited free people of color from owning firearms or moving between counties without passes. Government record-keeping exposed how arbitrary racial classifications were.
So again, this draws back to, again, what's happened here today. You know, you're getting people snatched up off the streets just because of what they look like. Again, here we go. Another class of people that has was by the government racially classified. Mad lad, what you say? You missed these laws? Meaning, explain yourself, bro. I'm interested. What you mean by that? Since you were kind enough to type it, expound on what you mean by missed these laws. Expound. Let's see if you'll be. Let's see if my thinking is already correct about what you mean by missed these laws. Go ahead and type in what you mean by missed these laws. Well, I'll go ahead and continue to play this.
Solomon Collins appears as free person of color in 1840.
Yeah.
Mulatto in 1850.
That's what
White
I thought.
In 1860, and colored in 1870.
That's what I thought. I kind of figured you was one of them. I kind of figured that. Again, I don't really think that I really need to deal with you, but you know, there's a place that you can go to. You can have that kind of life. Why would you decide to come here? You could go find some like-minded folks that really believe what youth is thinking. I don't care what color you are, whether you're black or white. There's some like-minded folks. Ignorance has no color, folks. So just because you said you were black, was that supposed to change my opinion about who you are? That's probably just made it even worse. So, you know, go on over there, Yassa Boss. I'm sure you can find Nick Fuentes or a Charlie Kirk supporter or the Hodge twins or somebody like that that will love to listen to your comments. But to be quite honest with you, mad lads, anyone that tells me that puts that starts their name off with mad, that tells me you don't have very much to say anyway. Okay, so I'll speak to you like you spoke to me. Bye, nigga.
Racial identity changed based on which census taker arrived. The persecution intensified in the early 1900s when Virginia's Dr. Walter Ashby Plecker launched a campaign to reclassify established Melungeon families from white to colored status, destroying their social standing through bureaucratic warfare. Smart families exploited this chaos for survival. Some split their strategy across generations. Older members remained mulatto while children passed as white. The Civil War brought systematic hostility to Melungeon communities that went far beyond typical military conflict. These families faced targeted persecution because their mixed heritage and economic success challenged Confederate racial ideology, while their geographic location in East Tennessee placed them in strategically.
Well, and again, folks, you still hear that today. If America needs, if they don't have the black folk to punch down on, if they don't have the Hispanic population to punch down on, the next people they punch down on is who? Poor white folks. Them folks from there always. And have you ever heard any real one of those guys talk good about Appalachia? When you think Appalachia, what's the first thing you think? You don't have to type it, but when someone says Appalachia to you, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? I know what comes to mind. I can say it. I think the Hatfields and the McCoys, they've been so-called battling each other for years, killing each other for years. Ain't nobody been put in jail yet. There's some other things that come to mind, but I won't mention them. But all I got to tell y'all is go find that movie called Deliverance. I think it came out in the middle 70s, early 70s, something like that, late 70s. Burt Reynolds, Ned Beatty, a few of the other folks is in it. I think a young John Voight is in it. A few other folks is in it. So go check it out. If you've never seen that movie, then go check it out. If you ever heard of the song Dueling Banjos, the guy that acted, the young kid that actually was in Appalachia that was playing that banjo, he's still alive to this day. He's a grown man now. He's in his 60s now, but he's still alive. Still lives pretty much as y'all saw him in the 70s in Appalachia.
Contested territory. Union sentiment ran strong among Melungeon families, with multiple community members enlisting in federal units during the Civil War. This political allegiance marked entire communities as traitors in Confederate eyes, making them targets for organized retaliation that extended beyond normal military operations.
And see, my point of this whole thing is just to show you that America don't care who it steps on. They all the white establishment always got to have an enemy, ABT. They always got to be fighting somebody, anyone that's different from them. And they'll go to great lengths to hide history. They'll even try and wipe it out by any means necessary. Any means. And here's prime example of it. This stuff you can't argue. You can go and find out for yourself. You know that these folks that I'm talking about right now, they do exist. They're thriving in those regions that we said. The government did do what they did when it came to the Civil War. They did, excuse me, they did treat these people different.
Confederate raiders operating in Hancock and Hawkins counties launched coordinated attacks on Melungeon settlements during the Civil War years. The Mullins family on Newman's Ridge experienced repeated raids because several sons served in Union forces.
I wanted y'all to look at these folks here. Looking at these folks here, maybe the kid on the far left-hand side, but the rest of these folks look white. But understand something. These families, all these families now, they could trace their roots back to West Africa. There's a name down here for these folks because some of these folks live here in some parts of South Carolina. There's a name down here for it. I won't use the racial slur, but they call them. But they look ambiguous. You can now you can tell that they're not white folks, but they're not black folks either. It's hard to categorize these folks. They don't look black and they don't look white. And they don't look Hispanic. They don't look Japanese.
Confederate irregulars surrounded their property, looted weapons and supplies, then burned their substantial two-story home while forcing the family to watch. When Mahala Mullins and her children rebuilt the house, raiders returned and burned it again, forcing the entire family to stand in harsh weather while ensuring complete destruction. Similar attacks targeted the Collins, Goins, and other Melungeon families throughout the region.
I want y'all to go back and listen to some of the. Let me see if I can pull it back. Hold on.
Destruction. Similar attacks targeted the Collins, Goins.
Listen to some of these names. Aren't these? Dare I use the word? I know some folks going, but a lot of these are black surnames. Collins, Goins, Geddes, Grooms,
and other Melungeon families throughout the region. The Gibson family lost livestock, stored grain, and farm equipment to Confederate raiders who viewed their prosperity as evidence of dangerous racial mixing that needed elimination. These systematic attacks served multiple purposes: punishing Union loyalty, intimidating mixed-race communities, and demonstrating that black or mixed-race success would not be tolerated in the post-war South.
Okay. Again, folks, you heard it. Let me just say ABT. That's what I heard. I didn't want to. I'm gonna do my look at this right here, folks. Look at the picture that's on the screen in front of you. This is all because folks that didn't look like them, regardless of whether you're black or brown or unidentifiable to them. That's America right there. That's America. Years of this, folks. It's 2026. That's the only religion that's not classified as a religion. Them folks are at church right now. They are at church right now. They believe that they are the divine people. They really are. Look at them. If you're a black or a brown person, wouldn't that strike fear in your heart if you was the guest of honor at that crowd? No, they don't look like that anymore there, Cap. They sure don't. They wear suits now. If you was here earlier, you would have seen some of them at the whatever that clown show Trump had the other day, the State of the Union. Yeah, they wear suits now, brother. Well, I see again there, Cap. That's what I said. A lot of folks hit dogs holler, but and I said it earlier. Not every American thinks like this. If every American thought like this, would we have ever got out of bondage of slavery? Yes, I think eventually we would have, but it wasn't. There was Americans, white Americans, that surely didn't like it. There's white Americans right now that surely didn't like what was going on. If I'm not mistaken, there was at least two white Americans right now that gave up their life for what's going on today. So the struggle is real, no matter the color of the skin, because I think you as a white American and me as a black American, I understand one thing, that we all fall under the same umbrella. We all are human. We all are infallible. Well, I should say not infallible. We all make mistakes. But some of this stuff is like what we see on the screen. This is not a mistake. This was not a mistake to hate someone that much that you would put a robe on and meet with hundreds of other. Look, there's hundreds of folks out there, folks, right now. Hundreds. Let's move on to the next one here. Let me take this off the screen here. Let's move on to the next one.
And watching celebrity drama, powerful people are quietly erasing us from the American story. The Kennedy Center just scrubbed Black History Month from their February 2026 calendar. The Smithsonian is reviewing exhibits for patriotic alignment. The military removed Juneteenth programming from their websites. State after state is gutting African American studies from schools. They call it restoring American values. What values are they really restoring? This is the same racist playbook used for generations, but now they have found the perfect cover. Let empty calendars replace outright bans. Let parental right replace censorship. Let budget cuts replace literacy laws. If this can happen on the 100th anniversary of Black History Month, in broad daylight, at the most prestigious cultural institutions in America, then Black history is not just being rewritten, it is being surgically removed from American life. And they are counting on your silence to finish the job. Picture the scene at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C., February 1st, 2026, 100 years since Carter Woodson created Negro History Week. The marble halls should be filled with celebration. The theaters should showcase Black excellence. The calendar should overflow with programs honoring our heritage. Instead, you find almost nothing. A few token events scattered across the month, generic programming that could happen any February. The center that calls itself America's living memorial to President Kennedy, the man who started the civil rights legislation, has essentially abandoned Black History Month on its centennial anniversary.
I guess they said 100 years, that's enough of that. But y'all don't think that's not the work of the Trump administration? Again, I said that back in 2016. Some folks were saying I was race baiting, that Donald Trump was not a bigot. Well, here's proof positive that the Trump administration is systematically wiping out all mentions of Black greatness. Even at the Kennedy Center, he tried to rename it. He fired the regular folks on the board so he can replace it with people that was more friendly to what he wanted to do. I'm going to say something that probably just going to get most white America in uproar. Y'all got mad when he tore down the east wing of the White House, the Rose Garden, because that was a part of Camelot. Y'all got mad because Jackie Kennedy Rose Garden was torn up by Trump. But you remained silent while Trump was eliminating Black history left and right from the Smithsonian, was telling schools not to teach Black history. It was DEI. But the only time you wanted to speak up when it affected you, the Rose Garden getting tore up. That's enough, Trump. Now y'all want to be mad. Y'all wanted to speak up when Trump when folks was talking about let's replace these Confederate monuments. Let's take them down, or let's rename some of these schools that has these Confederate. Why would we? Y'all get mad because folks don't want to celebrate the losers. Y'all do know the South lost. The losers don't get to celebrate, but in America, it's all right. Come here to Charleston, South Carolina, see how many names is named after folks that's either was for slavery or actually held slavery. Actually had slaves. See how many buildings are named after actual slaveholders that South Carolina will not rename because they're talking about it's part of their heritage. But see how many, there's a little small plaque in Beaufort, South Carolina. It talks about Robert Smalls and what he did. There's another little small plaque in Walterboro, South Carolina, that tells you where the Tuskegee Airmen trained at. There's another little historical plaque that's on Interstate 17 to tell you where some of the tribes were. All right, Iran for USA. No war. Lord, why are you coming here spamming? Why do you do that? You have nothing else to do today, man? Huh? I'm not going to wait. I'm just going to ban you now. You had nothing else to do today? I'm not going to wait for you. I ain't got time for that today.
But this is just the warning shot. The Kennedy Center decision did not happen in a vacuum. It is part of a coordinated strategy that has been rolling out across federal agencies, museums, schools, and cultural institutions since 2025. The new administration came in with what they called patriotic mandates for all federally funded organizations. Museums had to review their exhibits. Schools had to audit their curricula. Military bases had to evaluate their diversity programming. On paper, it looked like routine policy review. In practice, it became a systematic purge of Black historical content. Here is how they did it. First, they targeted the newest programs. Juneteenth celebrations that started after 2020 suddenly lost federal funding. Diversity training programs in government agencies got labeled divisive and eliminated.
What did Trump say? We finally got rid of DEI. So he's right. This is not a one-off. This has been a systematic. Nobody wanted to pay to Project 2025. They told y'all they were doing this, but y'all don't want to pay attention. Y'all want to say this was speculation. Y'all want to say that we was in our feelings. Trump is not going to do none of this. But here it is in front of you. You were warned. This like my man said, this didn't happen in a vacuum.
The AP African American Studies course, which took decades to develop, was stripped of content about systemic racism, modern civil rights movements, and contemporary Black intellectual thought. They left behind a sanitized version focused only on slavery, early civil rights, and individual achievement stories that do not challenge white comfort. And this is exactly how they get away with it. By the way, if you want more hidden stories like this, subscribe to Black Stories Untold. Now,
again, folks, make sure you get over there and subscribe to Black Stories Untold. I've subscribed to it. You're going to find some great information over there. And even if you agree or disagree with, at least take a look at and get a different perspective. Because not everything that's out in the media right now is actual and factual. A lot of you folks will sit in these echo chambers and believe that some of the stuff that you're saying, and I hate to say it, some of you Black men and some of you Black women echo the same sentiment that DEI, diverse, equity, inclusion, is a bad thing. Some of you folks actually believe that. As a Black person, why would you believe that? What's wrong about being diverse? What's wrong with wanting to be treated equally? What's wrong with wanting to be included if I have the correct credentials? You can't go get a job as a astrophysicist if you don't know what the fuck you talking about. If you want to talk about DEI, let's talk about Pam Bondi. If you want to talk about DEI, let's talk about Pete Hegseth. If you want to talk about DEI, let's talk about Lauren Boebert. If you want to talk about DEI, let's talk about Marjorie Taylor Greene. If you want to talk about DEI, let's talk about what's that lady that's the House Speaker, the press secretary. Let's talk about them because those folks are DEI. Let's talk about Kash Patel. That's DEI, folks. Them folks know what they're doing. What's the border chick's name? Does she know what she's doing? She run around masquerading with costumes on. Might as well marvel the Mustang. She's almost for real. You saddle her up with spurs on her heels. Y'all remember that commercial? What is that horse gonna do? We don't know what she gonna do next. What about Linda McMahon? Those aren't DEI's hires. They don't folks know what they're talking about.
Back to what happened next. Then they moved to established institutions. The Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History received new interpretive guidelines that emphasized shared American values over racial grievance narratives. Translation: stop talking about how racism actually worked and focus on feel-good stories about Black people.
Oh yeah, let me tell you, you know, they was feeding real good. I don't know why they want to complain. They clothe us on Monday. They feed us corn on Tuesday. They beat us on Wednesday. I don't know why y'all want to leave the master's house. Feel good stories. Well, they learned a trade. But you heard voices of slaves saying, George, and then the other lady saying that they just turned us out like cattle. We didn't have nothing. We didn't even have a bed. We had nothing. Direct contradiction of what these folks want us to believe today, that this is why that they told the Smithsonian to cut back on talking about the ills of slavery, the ills of Jim Crow, the ills of all these other things that were put in place to knock Black people down, brown people down. Anybody that didn't look like the status quo of America, what they thought what a patriot was, what they thought what a Christian is. And some of you dumb left-handed niggas believe that y'all know what y'all talking about. A lot of y'all follow Anton Daniels, letting this believe that he is a Christian. Meanwhile, over there, he reviewing Fox News, talking about, yeah, they right. But y'all over there following him, super chatting him. Y'all know what the damage one little ignorant nigga can do? Anton Daniels is a prime example of it. That's what the damage that one ignorant nigga can do. Angry man, I ain't forgot about you. I ain't got shit to do on, well, I might not be able to get to you till Monday, but I got something for you too, brother. Eventually, I'm gonna be like I've been watching reruns of The Wire. I'm gonna be like Omar. I'm gonna hit your stash until you finally come out and see me. Until you finally hit this platform, I'm gonna hit every stash house that you at. I don't need to talk about Anton Daniels. Y'all talking about him, but y'all don't realize. Let me speak one. Now, I'm going to say this about Anton Daniels before I move on, all right? If y'all have not figured out by now that he is not running the show, you're out of your mind. If y'all don't think that Anton's wife is not in cahoots with this, you're out of your mind. If y'all don't think that Tasha K is not in cahoots with this, you're out of your mind, because she said something the other day and I recorded it and I sent it to somebody. She laughed and she said, ooh, they must have caught me slipping. How did we get past this? There is no absolute no way, as thorough as you are, Tasha K, that you did not know that Anton Daniel was in a hotel room with another woman claiming Christian values. Y'all, your team wouldn't have let that slip. This shouldn't be called Black History Month. This should be called Anton Daniels Month. So let me get back into some Black history, all right?
Who succeeded despite it. The National Park Service quietly changed fee policies so that Martin Luther King Day and Juneteenth no longer guaranteed free admission to historic sites. Small change, huge symbol. Even honoring our heroes costs extra now.
Okay. Do y'all think that an exhibit that used to be able to go into for free, you used to have to be able to go into the park, or a lot of you folks, I know I used to live in Georgia. I guarantee you some of y'all try to go to Stone Mountain Park and they jacked up the price of admission, didn't they? A lot of y'all went to the government parks and they jacked up the price of admission, didn't they? Or something that used to be free last year now costs you some pennies. Why? Because the government is not subsidizing it anymore, but they're not getting the bucks for it. So guess who get the savings get paid? Guess who gets down to pay for it? You, the consumer. You want to learn about your history? Pay me for it. And how many folks got the money to go and fork off 50, 60, 70, 80, $100 to go learn about the goodness of Dr. King? On how many folks is willing to spend $20 to go to a museum? What? $20? What? Yeah, but this was free last year. Come on, girl, we leaving. I ain't gonna pay no $20 to see no Dr. King. I ain't gonna pay $20 to let you on Dr. Martin Luther King. I'm gonna go listen to DJ music. He doing something, ain't he?
The military purge was swift and silent. Base commanders received memos to remove non-essential diversity programming from their websites and community calendars. Buffalo Soldiers exhibits came down for renovation and never went back up.
Okay.
Black History Month programming on military social media accounts dropped to almost nothing. When pressed, officials claimed.
Now, I'm going to tell you something. I used to follow a military radio. I used to follow that site. But I noticed that there was no mention in the last couple of years of any Black history activity. There was no tribute to an audience that the majority of folks make up the military are Black men and women. But there was no tribute to that audience that had access to Armed Forces Radio. Y'all know what I mean? Of course you do.
Named budget constraints and refocusing on core mission readiness. But somehow they found money for more Confederate memorial maintenance.
Okay.
State education departments followed the federal lead. Florida had already been cutting African American content from textbooks since 2023.
Okay.
But now states like Texas, Georgia, and South Carolina joined the effort. They did not ban Black History Month outright. That would be too obvious. Instead, they issued curriculum-focused guidelines.
They issued focused guidelines to saying you can't teach about slavery. You can mention it, but you can't teach that it was bad. You have to teach to the young whippersnappers that are in school now that although slavery was bad, but it's still the folks that were enslaved got something good out of it. They learned a trade. They learned what it was to be a family. This is what they'll teach you in history now. This is not made up, folks. This is what they're teaching in the South Carolina public school systems right now. Right now, to this day, you can't find a textbook that slanders slavery. You can't find a textbook that shows that Malcolm X was a good guy. And every textbook in the South Carolina curriculum, it paints Malcolm X as being a bad guy, as a revolutionary. It paints Dr. Martin Luther King as a revolutionary. It doesn't paint him as a martyr for Black history. It paints them as someone who poked the side of the establishment and paid the ultimate price for it. That's what the curriculum teaches now. It makes a small footnote of what Rosa Parks' contribution was. It don't tell you about the. It don't tell you about the Fannie Lou Hamers. It don't tell you about the woman that was 15 years old that came before Rosa Parks. It don't tell you about that. It don't tell you about what Robert Smalls did when he stole a boat and sailed through the Charleston Harbor. It don't tell you about that. It don't tell you about the Stonewall Rebellion here in Charleston, South Carolina. It don't tell you about all the different rebellions and the uprisings. It don't tell you about Denmark VC. It don't tell you about all of those different slave uprisings that happened throughout the Americas.
That prioritized foundational American principles and patriotic education. Teachers could still mention Black history, but they had to frame it within America's journey toward equality, rather than ongoing struggles with racism. The genius of this strategy is its surgical precision. They left the symbolic shell while removing the substance underneath. Schools still have Black History Month assemblies, but they feature sanitized stories about Rosa Parks being tired, instead of strategic resistance movements. Museums still have Black history exhibits, but they emphasize individual triumph over systemic oppression. The Kennedy Center still has some Black performers in February, but not programs that specifically examine Black historical experience or contemporary civil rights issues. This is not accidental. This is not budget cuts. This is not neutral policy. When you systematically remove Black historical content from federal institutions during the 100th anniversary of Black History Month, that is deliberate erasure. When you do it simultaneously across multiple agencies while claiming patriotic restoration, that reveals coordination. When you specifically target content that connects historical...
Folks, let me ask you something. Is there anyone more patriotic than Black Americans? Can you think of a war that Black Americans did not contribute in some way, shape, or form? Although in some wars our participation was limited. Why? Because y'all didn't want us to. But could you think any more group of race of people, as y'all like to say it, ethnic group of people that are more patriotic than Black Americans? I'll wait. Can you name one? Is there a white American that's any more patriotic than a Black American? Is there a white American any more patriotic than a Latino American that was born in this country? What gave you as white America the patent on what patriotism is? Because if you look up the word patriotism, the only real picture that you're going to find next to it should be Black men. Because if we're not patriotic, this country wouldn't be in existence. You can't find a war. You can't find a struggle that Black men and Black women, in some cases Black children, have not participated. You can't find a drug. You can't find a broom. You can't find an iron board. You can't find an open heart surgery clinic. You can't find lipstick. You can't find mathematic ways to get to the moon without the greatness of Black folks. But yet you as white America still won't understand that we are here and we are Black. We are not from Africa. We are just American as you are. So what could be more patriotic than that? White America were quick to say, well, this is what I contribute. That's why I'm a great American. We didn't contribute anything. Let you tell it we didn't. That's why we're reviewing this stuff, because according to you, we didn't do this.
Racism to modern inequality, that shows intent to control the narrative. The pattern becomes clear when you see who benefited from these changes. Private educational companies that specialize in patriotic curricula received massive federal contracts to replace diversity training programs. Conservative think tanks got grants to develop new museum interpretive materials. The same organizations that spent decades attacking multiculturalism and civil rights education suddenly found themselves writing official guidelines for federal cultural institutions. But the full picture is even bigger than this.
And let me jump into that for a minute. So do y'all don't think these so-called top of the line. You don't think the Angry Mans and the Anton Daniels and the O'Shea Duke Jacksons and the old Obsidians before O'Shea switch content. You don't think those folks had the Nick Fuentes? You don't think those folks had any direct access and content? What's the lady's name? Just Pearly thinks. You don't think they had any content or any push feedback or any add to what the country is doing, because we heard it on other Black platforms. What? Celebrate who? Dr. Martin Luther who? Or he did this. He cheated on his wife. Does that negate the greatness of him? Some Black folks say it does. Or she was just tired. She ain't doing nothing spectacular. Remember that great line from what's that name? Barbershop, when said it. But that's the sentiment of a lot of Black folks. I stopped following a lot of Black folks when I heard how nasty they were towards former Vice President Harris. She ain't really Black. It don't make no difference whether she's Black. Is she qualified? Somebody came in there early and said the last election had nothing to do with women or color. What the fuck else did it have to do with?
This erasure strategy builds on a century of attacks against Black historical memory. After Reconstruction, white historians rewrote textbooks to minimize slavery's brutality and glorify the Confederacy. During the Civil Rights Movement, they attacked Black studies programs as reverse racism. In the 1990s, they fought against including slavery in museum exhibits and national memorials. Every generation, the method changes, but the goal remains the same: control how America remembers its relationship with Black people. What makes the current moment different is the scale and sophistication. Previous erasure efforts targeted specific programs or regions. This campaign operates simultaneously across federal agencies, state governments, educational institutions, and cultural organizations. Previous efforts were openly racist and generated resistance. This campaign uses colorblind language about unity and shared values that makes opposition seem divisive. The 2026 Kennedy Center calendar represents the perfect example of modern erasure technique. No administrator had to write a memo saying, "Cancel Black History Month." Instead, budget meetings discussed streamlining programming. Scheduling committees emphasized broader audience appeal.
It's all in the tongue, isn't it, folks? Hey, Stockpile, say, how you doing, good brother? It's all in the tongue, isn't it? It's all in how you say it. No, remember the Southern strategy. Remember, you can't say the N word no more. You got to use words like busing. You got to use like different words like this and that, urban. But now the new buzzwords are what they're using. We're going to have to be, let's make sure that we're thinking in the lines of what it is to be a good American. Let's make sure that we do things that have a shared value. Well, what if I don't share the same values that you? Isn't that the core of America? Even though we have shared values, we are allowed to have different sets of values. Shouldn't we take everybody's different sets of values into account, although we have shared values as well? This is what this is telling me. If you don't have the same values that I have, your values don't make a difference. Follow me, rules for me, not for thee.
Marketing departments wanted less controversial February content. Each decision sounded reasonable in isolation. Together, they eliminated substantive Black historical programming from America's premier cultural institution during the most significant anniversary in Black History Month's existence. And this is where everything connects. The people orchestrating this erasure understand that controlling historical memory shapes political reality. If Americans learned that racism was systematic, government-sponsored, and economically profitable, they might support systematic government solutions like reparations, education equity, or criminal justice reform. If Americans only learn that racism was individual prejudice overcome by legal progress, they will oppose unnecessary programs that address ongoing racial inequality. The Kennedy Center calendar is not about February programming. It is about ensuring that future generations of Americans never fully understand how white power was constructed and maintained through.
And that is it in a nutshell right there, folks. It's not about now. It's about 40 years from now. It's if this country doesn't go to excuse me, if this country don't go to hell in a handbasket in the next 40, 50 years, I'm sure I won't be here. And maybe some of you that are listening to me won't be here. But one thing for sure, if this type of history is not preserved, just think if Langston Hughes was not preserved. Just think if the voices of those slaves that we listened to earlier was not preserved. Just think if Marvin Gaye was not preserved. 40, 50 years from now, the generation would know who Marvin Gaye is. Just think if Beethoven was not preserved. We would know who he is. And what America is simultaneously doing, I won't say America, but what the Trump regime is simultaneously doing is wiping out Black history. Jackie Robinson was responsible for integrating Major League Baseball. Do you think they're going to know that 50 years from now? Do you think they're going to know who Satchel Paige is 50 years from now? 60 years from now? 100 years from now? We don't know when America's time is going to be up. We don't know how long this earth going to last. But one thing we do know, as long as we're here, we are of the stewards. What the future going to tell. We are the living time capsules. So what side of the time capsule are you willing to be on? The side of the time capsule that it's blatant liars that we see here? Or the time capsule that tells you this is exactly how it was? Really? No, America's power structure did not come from the minds of great white men. No, some of the greatest invention in American history did not come from the mind of great white men. No, the smallpox vaccine, although it was amplified by great white men, it did not come from, it actually came from someone they thought was lesser than them. But I digress. Let's move on to the next one. Let me move this off the screen. Now, this last clip, folks. Now, if you've been in the military, if you're active military, it was a point in time to when I first started coming into the YouTube streets, I had a disagreement with someone that said that being Black in the military was a waste of time, that you were a broken buck. I'm not going to say who said it, but I vehemently disagree with that. But the reason why I vehemently disagree with that, because I want you to understand, as a Black man that joined the military, even though I'm sure I didn't have to go through the struggles of what they did, my ancestors did, there was still a whole lot of, did I say, racial animosity in the military. When I was in boot camp, when I left boot camp and I went to my A school, I just happened to go when the military had their what do you call it? The military ball, annual ball, November 10th. We went into a local VFW, and because 3 of the Marines that was with us, as they say in the Marine Corps, they have light green Marines and they have dark green Marines. So 3 of us were dark green Marines. The other 7 were light green Marines. All of us had on dress blues, but guess what? We as dark green Marines were not allowed to go into the establishment. Can't be too long ago because I'm talking to you. And I guarantee you, I could bring up if these folks know I was live, I could, and if I knew where they were at, I could bring up a couple of those guys and say, yeah, I remember that. I remember we had to go to ESPYs instead at Club Esperanza's. If you ever been to Meridian, Mississippi, you know what I'm talking about. But let's get to our next clip here. But like I said, being in the military, there's a special camaraderie ship. But I want you to understand something. It was not easy. Not then when I was in, and probably not now, and certainly not back then. Check this out.
2. That when things got tough, they break and run. That's what the history books told you. That's what the generals wrote in their reports. But there's a story they buried so deep, it took 70 years to dig up the truth. Picture this nightmare. You're a black soldier in 1944. You've trained for months with broken equipment, while white units got the new gear. Your own commanding general thinks you're inferior before you even see combat. You're shipped to Italy to fight seasoned German troops in mountain terrain so brutal, it breaks veteran white divisions. And when you succeed, they bury the story. When you fail, they scream it from every headline. Welcome to the 92nd Infantry Division, the Buffalo Soldiers of World War II. These men weren't just fighting Germans. They were fighting a war on two fronts. Every German bunker they overran was also a blow against the racist generals in their own army. Every town they liberated proved wrong the bigots back home. Every day they survived was evidence against the lie that black men couldn't fight, couldn't lead, couldn't endure. The real enemy wasn't just wearing German uniforms, it was wearing American ones too. By the end of this story, you'll understand how these soldiers didn't just defeat fascists abroad, they dismantled the racist myth that said they couldn't win at all. August 1944, the docks of Naples, Italy. Thousands of black soldiers step off transport ships into one of the most brutal theaters of World War II. The 92nd Infantry Division has finally arrived for combat. These men have been training for 2 years, watching white divisions ship out while they stayed behind. Now it's their turn. But their commanding general, Edward Almond, is already writing their obituary before they fire a single shot. Almond believes black soldiers are naturally cowardly.
I want you to imagine that, folks. Imagine going into battle when your leader doesn't have confidence in you. Imagine that. Imagine, again, having to say, just think, just let that sink in for a minute. Setting you up for failure against an enemy that's trying to kill you. And imagine being, when you start doing good, that this very same guy that's supposed to be in charge of you, instead of uplifting you and saying, I knew you guys could do it, he did everything humanly possible to discredit what these men were doing. And this is rampant throughout the military. Untold stories of greatness of military. I'll speak my piece on this. The reason the way you folks receive packages is because of this. One of the folks that the reason how you get packages through UPS, FedEx, came from the brain of me. The way you sign for a package came from us. Marine Corps 2nd Aircraft Wing. Everything, the way you sign for a package now, we had to write down. And the way you guys doing it now, automatically, it came from a brain somewhere. It wasn't in existence before the 8 of us. Four of those 8 brains were African, were black men, since they want to say African American. 4 of those brains were black men, 1 female, 3 black men. This is more hidden history. This is rampant throughout history of the military. We trained in Moffett Field. We trained here in Walterboro, South Carolina, with the Red Tails. Stop it. The Tuskegee Airmen. It's barely a mention. I guarantee you, folks could drive right by that airfield and don't realize the historical value of it. They could drive down Highway 21 in Beaufort, South Carolina, and not realize the historical value of where they are. They could not go to the waterfront in Beaufort, South Carolina, or Charleston, South Carolina, and not realize that the historical value of where they are standing. Because in 50 years, if we continue to let this go, think stories like this, stories like of mine, and stories like of your fathers and your ancestors, that won't be around to be told by anyone else. Just think, again, those voices, those slaves. If it not been for the internet, how many of y'all would have known about him? What's up, James? How you doing? And you're absolutely right. And that's why I always say, knowledge don't come to you. You got to go get it. Because as you can see, they try to bury you deep. Y'all remember the buzz of, I think, I'm not sure, when did the Hidden Color series come out with Tariq and them? You know, that's when they were the good guys before they start fleecing America. That's another thing. But you remember how every black person was amazed about what they saw or the new discoveries that they saw in these particular things. That's when we started getting hip of folks like Dr. Claude Anderson and Umar and Tariq Nasheed and a few of the other brothers that's on there. But it's funny. No one really talks about Dr. Claude Anderson, except for if it's in passing. If they just try to make it, well, Dr. Claude Anderson said, but that's as deep as they go into it. Dr. Claude Anderson said, we should. But then we're off onto a tangent about something else. Speaking of tangents, let me go ahead and get this play button here.
He said it in meetings. He's written it in memos. In his mind, these men are destined to fail. And here's the sick genius of it all. He's going to make sure they do, then blame it on their race when it happens. The perfect racist setup.
See,
predict
I told
failure, cause failure, then point to the failure as proof you were.
See, I told you. I told y'all we should not have hired the doctors to be a part of the military because they're shiftless, they're lazy, they don't learn. No, we can take that from the military and put it into pro football because they did not believe that until Doug Williams did the unthinkable in the Super Bowl, that black quarterbacks weren't capable of running teams. Oh, what a difference a few years make. Oh, what a difference 20, 30, 40 years make, don't it? Not only are black quarterbacks in full existence now, but they are the centerpiece of how many teams? Well, again, James, I appreciate you acknowledging the fact that, and that's the point of exactly what I'm saying, that history is not taught correctly in school. And if we don't do streams like this, if we don't teach our young folks that, hey, you got to go out and get this information because the government is doing all they can. You got to add it to your curriculum. You got to pass it on to your children. And that's both black and white, because this is not just black history. This, my friend, is American history. And this part of American history, they are trying to erase. Like this.
Right all along. The 92nd gets assigned to the Serchio Valley. Mountains everywhere. German defenders dug into positions they've had months to perfect. This is terrain so difficult that white veteran divisions have already struggled here. The Germans aren't just any enemy either. These are experienced troops who've been fighting for years, and they know every ridge, every valley, every killing field. If you wanted to set up a black unit to fail, you couldn't pick a worse place to do it. But something Allman didn't expect starts happening immediately. The men of the 92nd begin taking ground. In September 1944, elements of the division capture their first objectives: small towns, German positions. They're doing exactly what infantry divisions are supposed to do. They're winning. But when Allman files his reports back to headquarters,
Yeah, I want y'all to check this out. Although these men, under unsurmountable circumstances, a low quality gear, they still did what an infantry unit is supposed to do. They took over towns, they took over airfields, they did everything. But this is what their boss did.
Quarters. These victories barely get mentioned. A few lines at most. Success doesn't fit his narrative, so success gets buried. If you want more hidden stories like this, subscribe to Black Stories Untold. Now, back to what happened next. The 92nd keeps fighting through the fall of 1944. They're advancing slowly, like every other unit in Italy's mountain hell. But they're advancing. German prisoners are getting captured. Towns are getting liberated. The 370th Infantry Regiment, in particular, is performing exactly like a competent fighting unit should. They're proving wrong every racist assumption about black combat soldiers. And that's when the system decides to destroy them. December 26, 1944, the Germans launch a surprise counterattack in the Serchio Valley. It's brutal and sudden, hitting the 366th Infantry Regiment with overwhelming force. In the chaos and confusion, parts of the regiment fall back in disorder. Some positions get overrun. It's exactly the kind of tactical setback that happens to every division in every war.
Every division in every war. Hey there, El Boogie, how you doing? Let me read this. I've been buying physical books to have in my archives. I've seen the shift of the erasure of historical events, especially ones that expose the real foundation of America. You're absolutely right, El Boogie. If you're paying attention, you see it. You can choose to ignore it, but you're right. You need to stock up on it, because I in my family's library, there's still books that says these books were made for colored folks, for colored schools only. We still archive pictures of where my mother grew up at that says water fountains, pictures of colored water fountains for coloreds only. There's still actual archive pictures. So none of this you can go find any historical content if the Trump regime has its way. Almost slipped and called it administration. But if the Trump regime has its way, all of this will be gone before they leave office.
White units have retreated under similar circumstances throughout the Italian campaign. But when it happens to black soldiers, it becomes something different. It becomes racial evidence. Allman seizes on this moment like it's Christmas morning. Finally, proof. Black soldiers running from combat. Never mind that other elements of the division held their ground.
Let me translate. See, what happened is the darkest, they got overran. And when they got ran, some of them hard-tailed. He neglected to say there was only a small portion of them that ran. Just with all the other groups that got overran during this particular campaign. Some of them had their ground steadfast, and some of them retreated. As in any military campaign, sometimes you understand discretion be the better part of valor. Custer should have learned that, or he wouldn't have had that last stand that we now know is a damn lie. If he was a little bit more tactical about what he was doing, he might have lived a little longer. I don't know. He wouldn't have met his demise that day, but he underestimated his enemy. Let me read this. Proud of the men that proved the outdated military, at least of the 1920s and 30s, that made officers like Patton and Chesty Puller say that they're not want to fight without them. That's why, as a former Marine, James, that's one name that you can't get around. Chesty Puller, the grand old man of the Marine Corps. I think he was probably one of the ones that coined the term. There's no such thing as color in the Marine Corps. There's only two types of Marines. There's light Marines and dark Marines. Now, some Marines And I would venture to say the majority of Marines go by that moniker. There's only light green Marines and dark green Marines. But unfortunately, we now know that the military, the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Marines are saturated with bigotry. We now know that. But yes, I am. I appreciate their service. I'm with you in that sentiment there, James.
Mind that the retreat wasn't universal. Never mind that white units had similar breakdowns without anyone blaming their race. The Serchio Valley incident becomes the story Almond has been waiting to tell, and he tells it loudly. Here's where it gets darker. While Almond is writing report after report about black cowardice, he's ignoring his own failures as a commander. Bad intelligence, poor positioning, inadequate support. All the things that cause tactical failures in any army. But instead of examining his leadership, he blames the soldiers.
The same thing happened at the Battle of Little Bighorn, Custer. Bad intelligence, bad planning, bad strategic moves cost that entire regiment their life.
Skin color. It's the perfect scapegoat. Racism always is. The reports go up the chain of command. Negro troops prove unreliable under pressure. Racial characteristics make them unsuitable for combat. The same lies that have been told about black soldiers since the Civil War, now dressed up in official military language. And because the reports come from white generals, they're believed without question. The narrative is set. The 92nd Infantry Division is a failure because black men can't fight. But the men of the 92nd keep fighting anyway. Spring 1945, the final Allied offensive in Italy. While Almond is still writing his racist reports, his soldiers are proving him wrong on the battlefield. The 92nd participates in breaking through the German Gothic Line, the last major defensive position in northern Italy. They're advancing. They're taking prisoners. They're liberating towns. The 370th Infantry Regiment distinguishes itself repeatedly. These aren't the actions of broken, cowardly troops. These are competent soldiers doing their job. April 1945. Elements of the 92nd capture the towns of Massa and Carrara. They push German forces back toward the Po Valley. They participate in operations that lead to the liberation of Genoa. Every objective taken is another nail in the coffin of racial military theory. Every German position overrun proves black soldiers can fight just as effectively as anyone else. But you know what happens to these victories in Almond's reports? They disappear. Success doesn't support his racist conclusions, so success gets erased. Keep watching, because what comes next will blow your mind. The war in Italy ends in May.
You hear that? Success didn't fit his narrative. So he didn't tell them. He was quick to tell them about a couple of colored soldiers, as they called them back then. But he failed to tell the overwhelming success of this same unit, because it would have meant to him as a white man that black men can fight alongside and be just as effective, in some cases better. And how do I know this? Again, personally speaking, I knew a man that had a couple of silver stars, that had a couple bronze stars, that had a couple purple hearts. That was my daddy. You don't get them from hanging out. You don't get this. That's for valor. That's for saving somebody. That means for each one of those, that meant a generation was able to move on. Because at this time, women wasn't allowed in combat. And Vietnam was they. You're talking about 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old teenagers.
In 1945, Germany surrenders. The 92nd Infantry Division has served in sustained combat for 9 months. They've advanced through some of the most difficult terrain in Europe. They've captured towns, taken prisoners, and contributed to Allied victory. By any reasonable measure, they've performed their mission. But that's not the story that gets told. Here's the real crime that was committed against these men. The post-war assessment of the 92nd Infantry Division becomes official military history. And that assessment, written by the same racist officers who sabotaged them, declares the division a failure. Not because they failed, but because acknowledging their success would destroy the entire racist foundation of military segregation. The truth about the 92nd is buried under lies because the truth is too dangerous. Think about the mathematical evil of this system. Every black success had to be minimized or erased. Every black failure had to be magnified and racialized. Meanwhile, white units experiencing identical problems got different explanations. When white soldiers retreated, it was tactical necessity. When black soldiers retreated, it was racial cowardice. When white units succeeded, it proved their superiority. When black units succeeded, it got forgotten. The game was rigged from the start.
Much respect to AT. So you know exactly what I'm talking about. Don't those particular, I know my father, he has a picture of a general presenting him his stars. And you could tell how proud, the look that he had on his face of how proud he was. That's probably one of the highlighted pictures in my family's archives. That first silver star that he received. I'm not going to tell you the general because you could probably go into the archives and the internet and find the exact picture, because it's a very limited picture of my father being presented a silver star by a famous general. So again, you know exactly what I'm talking about. That holds a certain esteem in your family's history of archives to know that that bronze star and that Purple Heart meant that some family was able to carry on. That even being struck, he was able to move on. And only one person, there was only one man in my life I was ever afraid of, and that was him.
But the full picture is even bigger than this. The 92nd Infantry Division wasn't just fighting a military war. They were fighting an ideological war. Every day they stayed in the field was evidence against racist military theory. Every German position they captured was also a victory against American bigotry. Every town they liberated proved wrong the generations of lies about black military capability. These soldiers weren't just defeating fascists, they were defeating the fascist ideas in their own country's army. The men of the 92nd came home to a segregated America that refused to acknowledge their service. The same country they'd risked their lives for still denied them basic civil rights. Many joined the growing civil rights movement, carrying with them the knowledge that they'd proven racist military theory wrong. They'd fought and won against both German fascists and American racists. That experience, that confidence, became
AT, my sentiments exactly. My service was minuscule compared to the amount of time and service that my father gave, that my uncle gave. You're absolutely right. Combined, you know, it's small in comparison to what they did. I still wonder, you know, how we made it sometimes. I wonder how my cousins made it sometimes. But, you know, even though in the face that when they were gone, you know, that presence was still there. So, you know, when you're absolutely right. And when people say thank you for your service, I say don't forget my pops and my uncles in that, but appreciate it.
Became part of the foundation for the freedom struggles of the 1950s and 60s. And this is where everything connects. The systematic erasure of the 92nd's real record wasn't just about military history. It was about controlling the narrative of black capability. Because if black soldiers could fight as effectively as white soldiers when given a fair chance, then what other racist assumptions were lies? If
A whole lot of them. And again, what's up there, Sojo? 2 1 1 2. You're absolutely right. It says the fact globally, Caucasian people represents only 1 out of 8 people on the planet. We are the true global majority. We are absolutely the diaspora of people of color. We are the majority. We absolutely are. So that explains a lot of things. I know we're not going to get too deep into that, Sojo. That's for another stream. We're going to talk about, we can talk about Gaddafi and a few of others, what he was trying to do to solidify of what you just said, of what could possibly happen if we decide on the diaspora to stop fighting each other and become a collective. What could really happen, Sojo? Something to think about, ain't it?
segregated units succeeded despite systematic sabotage, what could integrated units accomplish? The success of the 92nd Infantry Division was too dangerous to admit. It threatened the entire structure of American racial hierarchy. President Truman integrated the military in 1948, partly based on lessons learned from World War II. But by then, the false narrative about segregated units was already set.
It took decades for historians to dig through the racist reports and uncover what really happened in those Italian mountains. The truth was there all along, buried under generations of lies designed to protect the feelings of bigots who couldn't handle the reality of Black military excellence. Here's what the 92nd Infantry Division really proved in World War II. They proved that when Black soldiers were given adequate training, competent leadership, and fair treatment, they performed just as effectively as any other troops. They proved that racism, not race, was the real enemy of military effectiveness.
And before we let this finish out, you could just go through history. I think you can find out something that has to do with the tanks. I think you can find something to do with the airplanes. I think you can find something to do with the ships. I think you can find something to do with the ground pounders. That covers all facets of the military. And each one of those facets of the military, you can find something great about, or greatness of us that was unprecedented before it was done. Let's talk about the attack on Pearl Harbor. Who came up from the kitchen to man the guns that was not able to touch those guns? That's the first time, other than studying them, it was the first time he fired that gun at them Japanese, taking out some Japanese. Y'all know who I'm talking about. His first name Dory. Let's talk about the Tuskegee Airmen. That fighter pilot said, "Fuck it, we're not flying unless these folks is flying with us." The B-29 bombers. I know a guy named I met in Georgia, Mr. George Lamar. Rest your soul, Mr. George Lamar. But he was one of those folks on those B-29 bombers, and I had extensive conversations with Mr. Lamar. But what was it like to be on those planes? And he told me one day, as bigoted as I was, as much as I thought that Black people could not do, I learned the hard way, because we would not fly unless them colored folks was flying with us. Even in his idea of thinking that he wasn't a bigot, he still was. But he still, in his bigotry, recognized the greatness of them colored folks, as he called us. And this was no more than 10 years ago, 15 years ago, tops. Well, again, let me read this. I'm not ashamed to say that I stopped every effort my nephew to consider military service. Unlike me, he didn't have used it to as an economic stepping stone. And you know, I think AT, you and I understand that exactly. I think I know exactly where you're coming from that, because I was quite honest with my nephews. If I had it to do all over again, would I have joined the Marine Corps now, knowing what I know? I know better to go someplace that I'm not wanted. I'm proud of my service. But hindsight being 2020, I'll tell my sons, that's not the place for you. I tell my nephews, that's not the place for you. I'm proud of my service, and I'm proud of the friends that I made, whether they're light green or dark green. But I wouldn't tell my sons or my nephews, no, don't do that. Stay far away from the military as you can. There's better ways to making some money. I'm sorry.
They proved that every failure blamed on black inferiority was actually caused by white supremacist sabotage. And most importantly, they proved that black excellence could survive and succeed even under conditions specifically designed to destroy it. The real victory of the 92nd wasn't just tactical, it was ideological. They didn't just help defeat Nazi Germany, they helped defeat the Nazi ideas that infected their own military.
And that's exactly right there, James. That sentence just kind of rolled right into what just happened there, because it's more than just fighting for a war. They had to make some Americans come to grips with their own bigotry. You mean this man just saved my life, and the only reason I don't like him because that's the color of his skin? That's why I don't like him. That's it? You sure? You're absolutely right. They did get more. They did get more than toting a gun or sitting up in an enlisting post or whatever. There was a lot more to it than that. What's the old saying? Some gave some, and some gave all. Literally all. Some left a legacy behind. Some gave all but no legacy, but some left a legacy behind. That's giving all. The tomb of the unknown soldier, that's a legacy.
Every German bunker they overran was also a blow against American racism. Every town they liberated was also a liberation from the lies that said black men couldn't fight, couldn't lead, couldn't win. Their success under impossible conditions didn't just contribute to Allied victory. It contributed to the long march toward equality that would transform America itself. That's the story they tried to erase. The story of soldiers who fought 2 wars and won both. The story of men who proved that courage has no color, but cowardice does. It's the color of the racism that tried to destroy them, failed, and then lied about what really happened. The Buffalo Soldiers of World War II didn't just serve their country, they saved it from its own worst lies about itself. If you want more stories of black people who beat the system, click the video on your screen now.
They say,
again, folks, if you want more stories about the goodness of us, get on over there and click on to it, check them out. And listen, whether you disagree, it's hard to argue with facts. It really is. It's hard to argue with facts. I say again in my Dr. Umar voice, it's hard to argue with facts. Ladies and gentlemen, I say again, it's hard to argue with facts. He ain't lying. But some folks will. Some folks will come over, hit this stream today and said that I'm a race baiter. That I said a lot of things that was untrue. Tell me one. Think about smallpox. You think about the Buffalo Soldiers. You think about Trump. You think about the old white men standing up and clapping because Trump ended DEI. All that's untrue. I just made all of that up. I had nothing to do with almost 3 hours, or a little over 3 hours of my almost 3.5 hours of my time today to come on the live stream and make up lies about Trump and America. They had nothing better to do than that. Well, anyway, folks, again, if you're interested, later on this evening, right around 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the JDCD, 4 hours of smooth R&B, smooth jazz, some funk fusion. the best of the JD CD. If you're into the jazz, classic R&B jams, the link is down in the description. Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I am live on radio with the Music Cafe playing hits from the decades, the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and some brand new music from today. If you're inclined to, check out yesterday. Had a great conversation with a great independent artist, Vibe. I hope to bring on some more great artists. The election season is about to kick off over here, so I'm about to, hopefully I can get out and get at some of these politicians to have a chop it up session with them. So in the meantime and in between times, folks, don't forget, like, share, and subscribe if you don't mind. It's time for me to get out of here. The grace of day costs you absolutely nothing, ladies and gentlemen. Say hello to someone. Might change the way they're thinking, might change the way they're living. You never know. If you pass them and don't say hello. Till next time on the Chop Chop, I'll see y'all. Please be safe.
Look, all you motherfuckers been snitching for him and shit. Now you standing up in here, goddamn it, talking about preaching preacher. Fuck that nigga. Fuck that. I'm gonna shoot your ass too, motherfucker. Keep on. You gonna get shot too, nigga. You gonna get shot. God bless the fool, goddamn it. God bless the fool. Now, I'm gonna tell y'all something. I'm gonna end this goddamn thing. Look, where's that goddamn money bowl at? Who got that money bowl? We're taking that money right now before you leave this bitch. We ain't leaving out here for free, motherfucker. Yeah. Y'all know the motherfucker ain't no good. You want, look,